Okay, book 3 of the Odyssey. King Nestor remembers. King Nestor, old man Nestor, ancient, as I would say. He has lived what they would say as having lived through like 3 lifetimes. Nestor has seen things. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Wizard, I hate you for that. Nestor also comes from a very interesting bloodline, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's all... So we have, I guess, a quick recap. Quick recap, book 1 and 2, we met Telemachus, we met the suitors. We know that Telemachus is on his way. He's got Athena in disguise as mentor with him, who gathered him up a crew and ended up saying, okay, I'm setting out to what he would say is sandy Pylos, Pylos being the home of Nestor, and he will probably also hit up Sparta. He will hit up Sparta. From Heracles to the Odyssey. Yeah, literally he goes kind of from Heracles all the way, and the Argonauts through the Odyssey. He's actually a member of the Argonauts. Okay, new Odyssey book. So basically Telemachus is here to hear if there's anything people know about his dad, because he's got nothing, and it puts him in a bad situation. So, we all ready? We're tucked in? We're sat? Or whatever we're doing, all right. Cryptid. Look, they wondered. I think they started to wonder if Nestor was immortal. They were just like, how is this guy not dead? So book 3, King Nestor remembers. As the sun sprang up, leaving the brilliant waters in its wake, climbing the bronze sky to shower light on immortal gods and mortal men across the plowlands ripe with grain, the ship pulled into Pylos, Neleus's storied citadel. So, already breaking, yes. Tucked in for bedtime story, exactly. Let's talk about Neleus. We could recruit Nestor. Nestor would join the Paganauts. Neleus is the father of Nestor. He's the mythological king of Pylos. He's sometimes said to be a son of Poseidon, and sometimes said to be a son of Cretheus, who is the king and founder of Iolcus, Iolcus being a kingdom in Thessaly. More often than not, he is considered a son of Poseidon, and he is the twin brother of a guy named Peleus, or Peleus. Peleus is very famous, especially in the tale of Jason and the Argonauts, because Peleus is the one who usurped the throne of Iolcus from his half-brother Aeson, who was the father of Jason, and it is Peleus who sent Jason on the quest for the Golden Fleece. So, now, Neleus wasn't super involved in that. The most you get with Neleus, I think there's some later myths, it might even be a Roman myth, but I can't remember off the top of my head, that he found his mother, or who was being mistreated by his stepmother, and it was all very weird and strange, but in general, he kind of stayed out of, is this the same Peleus that's related to a muse somehow? No. Peleus is a son of Poseidon alongside Neleus. He's a half-brother of Aeson, so an uncle of Jason. Maybe you're thinking of Peleus, or who is the father of Achilles, who was married to Achilles' mother, who's a nymph. Maybe that's where you get that idea, Kit E. So yes, Neleus was not super involved in the Jason stuff. Now, Nestor is listed as somebody who goes on as an Argonaut, and likely because he just goes, yeah, we're half cousins, let's not. Greek family trees, oh, I know. Nestor is the nephew of the guy who stole Jason's kingdom. Marissa M., you are correct. Yes. Let me tell you, family trees are a mess. They're a hot mess. Especially when you have like different versions and it's like, wait, whose son is this guy? But Neleus doesn't really get involved in all that. He's not involved in the usurpation of Aeson, so he's not, tainted by any of that. He heads off somewhere else. In fact, heading out instead to an area of a different cousin named Apharius, who really just welcomed Neleus in, said, hey, welcome, thanks for coming, and gave him land so that he could establish his palace, and this is what becomes the kingdom of Pylos. Now, Pylos is located in an area of Greece called Messenia. So yeah, that's essentially, we talk about the storied capital. It's because of all the tales around this family tree. It's like there's so many stories there, both great and terrible, really. So we're at Neleus' storied capital, where the people, I'm sorry, is that the same character as Peleus, who is Achilles' father? Kenskits? No, spelled differently. So Peleus, Pelias, is the uncle of Jason, and Peleus, who's Achilles' father, Peleus, as you noted. So different people. I know, similar sounding names. It's a pain. Neleus' storied capital, where the people lined the beaches, sacrificing sleek black bulls to Poseidon, god of the sea-blue mane, who shakes the earth. They sat in 9 divisions, each 500 strong, each division offering up 9 bulls. And while the people tasted the innards, burned the thigh bones for the gods, the craft and crew came heading straight to shore. Important to note here, I'm sorry, a little unrelated, but do you know where that big family tree you have? It looks very informative. So Electrocanes Ellie is what I'm going to call you. I believe whichever video where I first showed that, I think it's the one with the boar hunt. I think I listed what that tree is called and where you can try to find it. It's out of print, but some people have said they've found scattering copies of it. The family tree is less a tree, more a freaky tree, correct? And is on fire, yes. So these, we're going to talk a lot about sacrifices and the like in this chapter, which I'm sure anybody who pre-read is aware of. So we're talking here, the people eat the innards, burn the thigh bones for the gods. It was very much tradition that the people would sort of eat the innards and the good shit got sacrificed to the gods. When we get a little later in this book, there's a whole breakdown of a very specific way of doing the ritual and doing the sacrifice where the good stuff still goes to the gods, but the people still get to eat. But we're not quite there yet. It's much later in this book. But precursor, we're going to talk a lot about sacrificing. And this is all stuff where it seems like, why are we taking the time to do this? Obviously, to the Greeks back in the day, this would be very important for them to know, like, yes, they are doing their sacrifices right. These are very devoted people. These are, people who are in the good graces of the gods because of how they sacrifice. This is a fairly rich land. They're doing well. How come this guy having 500 times 9 guys sacrifice is all good, but Odysseus having 600 is just an outrageous number? Does Nestor just have a big-ass island? Pylos isn't an island. It's on the mainland. And yes, he had a bigger force than Ithaca. And also the fact that he's got this, we are now 20 years past the war, people have repopulated. What I took umbrage with in that epic review was that, so Odysseus comes, they don't ever talk of them sending reinforcements to Troy, with some very rare exceptions being, we bring in Neoptolemus, and we do bring in Philoctetes, but those are 2 individuals. Beyond that, it's the same crew of people, and you're telling me for 10 years of serious hardcore combat where everybody had to go and fight, he didn't lose a single man. I didn't buy it. But the numbers are fake. This makes sense if only because we're on his home island. This includes all the people who didn't go to war. This is 20 years later. The like. Everything's an island if you zone out enough. Eve, that is true. Mentioned Greece is not a great place for raising cattle. Nestor sacrificing a lot of bulls. Yeah, which tells you he got them from somewhere. And in general, Greece is not the best place for raising cattle because it tends to, in general, be really rocky and craggy. So if you have an area where you can sacrifice bulls, it's a huge deal. You might have also bought them from somewhere and transported them. You are correct, Game Wizard. I was thinking of Pyrrhus. All these P names. Kid Ethers, so many P names. So many P names. Greece is good for goats, right? Correct. Dude is I have the meats rich. Game Wizard, correct. And Heamatus, yes. Greece is great for goats and sheep. That's why those are 2 of the biggest proteins, essentially, or land proteins, if you will, that get mentioned, especially in a lot of the stories. Why is it always cows? Can't I sacrifice this little sheep? So Eve, cows, because they were so difficult to raise, especially in great quantity in Greece, were considered kind of sacred. Not quite on the level of, is it Hinduism or is it Islam where cows are extremely sacred? Someone can correct me. I know it is one of the Eastern religions where Hinduism, thank you, where cows are considered particularly sacred. It's sort of similar, but not quite. They would obviously sacrifice them and they would eat them. But Greece, in terms of topography in general, is not a great place to raise cows. And so they were really special. Yes, trichologist, correct. Yeah, we see Odysseus fighting and all of that in the Iliad, which is such a, I love the Iliad. European royalty don't allow peasants to hunt on their land, only rich folk got the good meat. Yeah, kind of a similar idea. And also just because it was tough to raise these things, they were super special. They were often kept specifically for the purpose of sacrifice. Because, you know, they were that good, the gods loved them, so they should go to the gods. Also, why is it Helios had his cattle? Because they were difficult to have. So Maya, if you go to my Q&A video that I posted, somebody asked that question and I answered it. Maya, it wasn't you who asked that question, was it? Oh, sorry, your icon looks familiar. I almost feel like it was you. So yeah, Helios had cattle because he had a special island where he was able to graze a ton of them, and they were unique cattle, and so it was a big deal. Oh, it is not Islam. Okay, said dragon. My bad. But yes, Maya, I talk a little bit more about cattle and the like in that Q&A video. It's somewhere in the middle. Sorry, I skipped it. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. It was like an hour and a half. I don't blame you for skipping around. What does he need cows for? Because they like them. He doesn't really need them for anything. He likes them. It's not unusual for the gods to keep not produce. What's the word I'm looking for? Livestock, kind of as pets, keeping like they like them. No real reason other than he likes them and they're special to him. He needs a hobby. He wanted grass puppies, his emotional support, and mortal cows. Exactly. It's really exciting comment. I was gonna say, Maya, that's probably why. It's like I've seen your icon, so sometimes, you know, brain gets confused. Cows are cute. Gods do what they want. Yeah, that too. So let's see. The craft and crew came heading straight to shore, striking sail, furling it in the balanced ship. They moored her well, and men swung down on land. Telemachus climbed out last, with Athena far in front, and the bright-eyed goddess urged the prince along. Telemachus, no more shyness. This is not the time. We sailed the seas for this. For news of your father. Where does he lie buried? What fate did he meet? So go right up to Nestor, breaker of horses. We'll meet him. We'll make him yield the secrets of his heart. Press him yourself to tell the whole truth. He'll never lie. That man is far too wise. So let's talk about that epithet, breaker of horses. It is not unique to Nestor. We hear several other people called that. Very notably, Hector is known as a breaker of horses. Breaker of horses essentially means you're renowned for your skill as a horseman. Why is Athena called bright-eyed? If you go back to the first book club, go to the book 1 book club episode, we talk about why she's called bright-eyed. So horsemanship in ancient Greece was considered a very noble art. It was highly valued in ancient Greece and in their culture, especially also then if you could use horses in warfare. So this skill with horses coupled with this noted wisdom that Nestor has from long experience of just being alive, he's thus a really highly respected figure among the Greek kings. He was sort of like, as much as we would say Menelaus is number 2 behind Agamemnon, Nestor was sort of really the number 2. Like, he was so respected for his experience and how good he was, even still physically. What does wisdom have to do with lying or not lying? It's wise not to lie to someone who's coming to ask questions about their parent who may have died in a conflict, because you understand that Kleos is tied to it. Like, he's asking not just for personal reasons, there's essentially political reasons, and if he were to lie about something like that and get caught out in the lie, his reputation would be affected, which would affect the reputation of all of his descendants. And now let's keep in mind, Nestor had children, one of whom even died in the Trojan War, so he knows all too well it is unwise to lie. Did I miss how old Nestor is? We never specify, but he's old. He is old enough to be like this kid's grandfather, without question. He's said to have lived like 3 lifetimes, basically, at this point, which is to say, like, he's notably old. All back to not knowing if you're speaking. Yes, it also goes back to the potential of theoxenia. If a stranger has come up and is asking you for information, if you lie to them, that is bad xenia. You don't tell false tales. Grandpa Nesty. Exactly. But in this case also, while he has not met Telemachus, if somebody's coming saying, I am Telemachus, son of Odysseus, you're gonna be like, ooh, okay, stuff's going on. He was old during the war, now he's old. Book Dragon, you are correct. The prince replied, wise in his own way too. How can I greet him, mentor? Even approach the king? I'm hardly adept at subtle conversation. Someone my age might feel shy. What's more, interrogating an older man. Telemachus, the bright-eyed goddess Athena reassured him. Some of the words you'll find within yourself. The rest, some power will inspire you to say. You least of all, I know, were born and reared without the goddess's goodwill. And Pallas Athena sped away in the lead. As he followed in her footsteps, man and goddess gained the place where the Pylians met and massed. Yeah, mentor, how do I talk to old people? Pretty much. It's also the fact that going to talk to a king, he's not just asking an older man, he's asking a king. You know, there's political implications for this whole meeting. It's, don't mess this up, dude. And knowing how to ask without sounding like, how dare you not have told me something, it's, how do I get this guy to talk and unload and tell me what I need to know without coming across like I've got other reasons or you're trying to blame him for something. So it's his first real work at foreign diplomacy, if you will. There's Werther's as a gift and conversation starter. Game Wizard, I hate you. That's really funny. There sat Nestor, among his sons as friends around them, decked the banquet, roasted meats and skewered strips for broiling. As soon as they saw the strangers, all came crowding down, waving them on in welcome, urging them to sit. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, first to reach them, grasped their hands and sat them down at the feast on fleecy throws spread out along the sandbanks. Flanking his brother, Thrasymedes, and his father, he gave them a share of innards, poured some wine in a golden cup, and, lifting it warmly toward Athena, daughter of Zeus, whose shield is storm and thunder. A bunch of ungrossed dinner beans. So let's briefly talk about whose shield is storm and thunder. This is referring very specifically to the Aegis. So the Aegis is the very well-known shield of Zeus that he gives to Athena, very notably. Just like, here you go, daughter, please use it. Other gods have been allowed to use it in a one-time deal. I think he at one point maybe lets Apollo borrow it, but like he really gives it to Athena. And so Aegis, this word, the Greek word Aegis has multiple meanings, including the most common one being like goat skin coat, which is because the origin of the Aegis is it was said to have been made from the hide of the goat that actually suckled Zeus as an infant when his mother Rhea kind of snuck him away so that Kronos didn't eat him. Yeah, Aegis, Aegis. Now, another supposed meaning for Aegis is apparently something along the lines of violent windstorm, similar to the Greek word for thunderstorm, which is kataigis, which, I mean, tracks when you consider that Zeus is the god of thunder. And it's said that whenever Athena or Zeus like have the Aegis and they like shake the Aegis, if you will, the Mount Ida, which is where the goat that suckled Zeus was from, is apparently becomes like wrapped in clouds and thunder, and it's a big thing. That's one way to honor your old nursemaid. Yes, it is. You make them your shield, and it is an incredibly powerful shield. It brings the thunder, if you will. And so, yeah. And Athena, mind you, is still in disguise. So again, we've got a whole Theosenia thing happening here because they don't realize who this is. So the shield of storm and thunder greeted the goddess now with an invitation. Say a prayer to Lord Poseidon, stranger. His is the feast you've found on your arrival. But once you've made your libation and your prayer, all according to ancient custom, hand this cup of hearty seasoned wine to your comrade here, so he can pour forth too. He too, I think, should pray to the deathless ones himself. All men need the gods. But the man is younger, just about my age. That's why I give the gold cup first to you. Elders first. There is a proper way to do things. This is great Xenia, by the way. Like, absolute prime Xenia, how you treat a guest. And especially when you're in the middle of a feast and offerings to the gods. With that, Pisistratus placed in her hand the cup of mellow wine, and Pallas rejoiced at the prince's sense of tact in giving the golden wine cup first to her. At once she prayed intensely to Poseidon. Hear me, sea lord, you who embrace the earth. Don't deny our wishes. Bring our prayers to pass. First then to Nestor and all his sons grant glory. Then to all these Pylians, for their splendid rites, grant a reward that warms their gracious hearts. At last, Poseidon, grant Telemachus and myself safe passage home, the mission accomplished that sped us here in our rapid black ship. I did see some questions roll past. Say the ODYSSEY Nestor was in like his 120s. He's just old. One way to honor your old nursemaid is a professional. I know they worked together to kill Lesser Ajax, but did Poseidon ever forgive Athena for the naming of Athens? They hold grudges for a really long time. Birchwood vampire. He holds a grudge, and I think it's more just gives him a reason to bicker with her. They never really seem to have a serious fight. Does Athena just have a small collection of magical shields? Because doesn't she have a shield with Medusa's head? The shield with Medusa's head was wielded by Perseus. I think he gave it to Athena. Yeah, she kind of just has a collection of weapons. She is a goddess of warfare. I know Athena prays to keep up the disguise, but would it be awkward for her and Poseidon? Did Olympians ever pray to each other? This would not be awkward for her and to pray to Poseidon. She's maintaining her illusion, and it's also pretty smart when you know that Poseidon is essentially in a blood feud with Odysseus, and Telemachus could then potentially be at risk as a result. So it's important to like do anything you can to imbue goodwill towards Telemachus. And she's adding on saying, hey, look, even your peeps, your supposed bloodline here, they're down with my boy. How to be antagonistic besties with your niece, a guide by Poseidon. Mary, correct. They're frenemies more than anything. Which is, frankly, most of the gods are sort of basically frenemies with each other. Like, they bicker like any sort of family, but it's rare to have them truly hate each other ongoing into perpetuity. Yeah. So yeah, Clover, it's very rare for them to just sort of pray to each other. Usually a prayer a god would make to another god would be often they're calling on Zeus to do something for them. Or calling on another god to do something for them. But in this case, she's keeping up a disguise and she's trying to make sure that Telemachus isn't going to be essentially roped into the bad blood that Poseidon has for Odysseus. There's a long game she's playing here. Oh. All right, let's see. So she prayed, and brought it all to pass. She offered the rich two-handled cup to Telemachus, Odysseus' son, who echoed back her prayer, word for word. They roasted the prime cuts, pulled them off the spits, and sharing out the portions, fell to the royal feast. Once they'd put aside desire for food and drink, old Nestor, the noble charioteer, began at last. Now's the time. Now they've enjoyed their meal, to probe our guests and find out who they are. Strangers, friends, who are you? Where did you sail from over the running sea lanes? Out on a trading spree or roving the waves like pirates, sea wolves raiding at will? Who risk their lives to plunder other men? So talking about piracy, sea wolves, this raiding type behavior. Fun fact, one of Odysseus's epithets is Toliporthos, which actually means sacker of cities. And there's a note, especially if you have the Fagles version, you can find this in the introduction where they talk a bit more about this. It essentially notes this idea that piracy or raiding behavior, for lack of a better word, at least as it pertains to seafaring, might not have been viewed as all that disgraceful as we would probably think it would be back in the day. It's potentially seen as a bit more honorable, at least according to the writer Thucydides. And he was speculating, so we don't really have concrete yes or no on that. But Thucydides, who was writing in a classical age, later than this, but that raiding via the sea might not have been as seen as bad. So if people in this time period actually were out raiding people, would they be honest if asked about it? Potentially. I mean, we do know there is raiding that happens in the Odyssey. So Greeks said piracy rights. I mean, yeah, now that the niceties are out of the way, who the hell are you and what do you want? Pretty much trade tales. Time to trade stories. Tell me who you are, and then he will eventually talk to them as well. So yes. Exactly. Poised, Telemachus answered, filled with heart, the heart Athena herself inspired, to ask for news about his father, gone so long, and make his name throughout the mortal world. Nestor, son of Neleus, Achaea's pride and glory. Where are we from, you ask? I will tell you all. We hail from Ithaca, under the heights of Nion. Our mission here is personal, nothing public now. I am on the trail of my father's widespread fame. You see, searching the earth to catch some news of great-hearted King Odysseus, who, they say, fought with you to demolish Troy some years ago. About all the rest who fought the Trojans there, we know where each one died his wretched death. But father, even his death, the son of Cronus, shrouds it all in mystery. Clover flowers. What/who is Nion? I believe it is a mountain, but I will double check for you. See, we're just taking stock of islands that I arrive in. Yes. There is we will talk more about it. You can call it the colonizer mentality when it comes to the Lotus Eaters and the Cyclops. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So Clover, I'm pretty sure Nion is meant to be a mountain or the lake. Because they say under the where was that line? Under the heights of Nion. So I assume Nion is meant to be a mountain. I can't actually find you a specific answer, but that's how I always took it. No one can say for certain where he died. Whether or not he went down on land at enemy hands or out on the open sea in Amphitrite's breakers. Amphitrite, who, for those of you who don't know, is Poseidon's wife. She's lady of the sea, if you will. I love the sound of your keyboard. Oh, thank you. That's why I've come to plead before you now. If you can tell me about his cruel death. Perhaps you saw him die with your own eyes or heard the wanderer's end from somewhere else. More than all other man, that man was born for pain. Now, this note is very important. More than all other men, that man was born for pain. This ties, as we talked about in book 1, to Odysseus's name and where that word comes from, which is essentially, by son of Kronos, if they mean Poseidon hiding Odysseus' spot in the ocean, are they blaming the mystery on another god? Son of Kronos can refer either to Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades. Those are the 3 sons of Kronos. Specifically, he's talking about Zeus because he doesn't know about anything that's happened with Poseidon. So he's just like, is Zeus keeping it so that I don't be shrouding things in mystery? Zeus is hiding. He's not giving me a clear answer. Wet mommy. Oh my God. How dare you? Mary, how dare you? How dare you call Amphitrite wet mommy? But the Odysseus, actually no, we talked about Odysseia, but not Odysseus. We'll talk more about Odysseus and his name and sort of the meaning it has to do with receiving pain and hatred later when we start talking about Autolycus. but saying that that man was born for pain is a reference to his name and the origin of Odysseus's name, especially with how Autolycus came to name him that. Autolycus being Odysseus's grandfather. Wet Persephone. Get out of here, Mary. Go away. I know the Wet Hades reference, so get. Oh. Don't soften a thing from pity, respect for me. Tell me clearly all your eyes have witnessed. I beg you, if ever my father, Lord Odysseus, pledged you his word and made it good in action once in the fields of Troy where you Achaeans suffered, remember his story now. Tell me the truth. Nestor, the noble charioteer, replied at length, Ah, dear boy, since you call back such memories, such living hell we endured in distant Troy. We headstrong fighting forces of Achaea. So many raids from shipboard down the foggy sea, cruising for plunder, wherever Achilles led the way. So many battles round King Priam's walls we fought. So many gone, our best and bravest men fell. There, Ajax lies, the great man of war. There lies Achilles too, there Patroclus, skilled as the gods in council. And there, my own dear son, both strong and staunch, Antilochus, lightning on his feet and every inch a fighter. But so many other things we suffered past that count. What mortal in this wide world could tell it all? Not if you sat and probed his memory 5, 6 years, delving for all the pains our brave Achaeans bore there. Your patience would fray. You'd soon head for home. Fucking say. Look, I swear a lot, but Homer's pretty good about keeping any swearing in check. So, all of those names we talked about, we basically just kind of did a list of heroes, notable heroes that died at Troy. And yes, it is depressing. It was an intense and brutal conflict, and it was kind of their version of the World War. Like, it shook them. This was the war to end all wars in their mind. So we talk about Ajax. Specifically, he's talking about Greater Ajax or Telamonian Ajax. He was the best warrior after Achilles. And he actually died by taking his own life after the arms and armor of the now dead Achilles were actually given to Odysseus. It was part of a whole series of funeral games. And this armor and these arms in particular were made by Hephaestus, so they were good armor. And it just, like, his pride was so wounded by the whole thing, he offed himself. And when we get to the underworld, it's a very sad moment when Odysseus and Ajax see each other again. And yes, Marissa, the Greeks do love their lists of names. We talk about Achilles, who notably was killed by an arrow shot by Paris. And she says she would get Kitty, get out of here. Yeah, talk about a sore loser. Yeah, it's also important to note that these funeral games and these contests of wills, I think it wasn't even so much that Odysseus beat him. It was just that Achilles' mom decided to give them to Odysseus, and he was like, but I'm the best fighter after Odysseus. It is frowned upon. It's frowned upon, Game Wizard, correct. The offing yourself is not looked down fondly. But he had thankfully kind of bought himself so much kleos. Like, he was so renowned as a warrior that he ends up, in kind of the Elysian Fields, the fields of Asphodel, and he's fine. But it's just for armor and weapons to end at the bottom of the sea. Yeah. Though, actually, to be fair, Oro, Odysseus gives those arms and armor to Neoptolemus. So he gets them, but he ends up giving them to Achilles' son anyway, so. Whatever the case. It all has to do with honor and glory, and that was taken so seriously back then. Seems a little silly to us, but to them, that was everything. That was everything. Your reputation, your honor, and Ajax felt that his honor had been looked down upon and insulted, and it was something he could not bear. Bought himself credit with his deeds then. Yeah, in a way he did. And that is why he is still remembered fondly and positively as, Greater Ajax. Not only just because he is physically so big. That is part of why they were differentiating greater Ajax and lesser Ajax. Literally, first part of that is their physicality. Ajax was huge, greater Ajax. He was so large, it was said his shield was an entire ox hide covered that shield. And for him, that was like a normal shield. And the others were like, Christ, he's a big boy. He also was just that good of a warrior. But part of it is just sheer physical size. And my favorite Greek myth, Odysseus watching him go and saying, Athena not understanding why Odysseus didn't want to laugh at him. Yeah, he'd be thick. He'd be a thick boy. Achilles is then killed by Paris, which is sort of the understanding when you close the Iliad, if anybody's familiar with it. It ends on the funeral games of Hector. That's where we end the Iliad, and it's with the understanding that Achilles is probably going to be next to die. He sort of sealed his own fate, but he knew this when he went to Troy and with the things that come to pass. And then Patroclus was killed very dramatically in the Iliad by a kind of combination of Hector, Euphorbus, and Apollo. Like, Euphorbus is fighting him, and then Hector's fighting him, and Apollo is sneaking in there, getting himself involved when he, like, really shouldn't be. When do the gods ever listen? So that is how Patroclus dies. And then finally, we talk about Antilochus, who was the son of Nestor himself. He was actually killed by a hero named Memnon, who was an Ethiopian prince who was fighting on the sides of the Trojans. He's a pretty notable figure. And so we're going through a line of like, these powerful heroes died at Troy, which is speaking to how intense the conflict was at Troy. And did well when you got a 4v1 with a god included. Yeah, no, Patroclus did extremely well. He was this is why, we are not going to talk about the movie Troy, but Patroclus was a great fighter. He absolutely was. I mean, you had to be. You did not go to Troy and not be a good fighter. That was like bare minimum, you're a good fighter. And especially if you then also got named. Bare minimum, you're a good fighter. That's like asking for the littlest amount of stuff there. Also, didn't Odie and Ajax wrestle during Patroclus' funeral games and ended up in a tie? They did wrestle during those funeral games. I think they ended up in a tie. Actually, Ajax might have won. And that was for the old armor of Achilles, the armor that Patroclus had donned to make him seem like he was Achilles out on the field. Before then, Achilles then got a nice new bespoke Hephaestus made armor set. But that was part of the tradition of those games, is things like their arms and their armor would be part of the rewards for these games. Wasn't all the Myrmidons to be like the elite soldiers among the Greeks? The Myrmidons were very good soldiers because they followed Achilles and Achilles handpicked them. But yeah, and that's only because Achilles was so good. Like, really, Achilles was in a whole nother class from all these heroes. But Ajax was close. Ajax was second only to Achilles, which is like, one, telling you how good Achilles is, but also just how good Ajax is. Breaking up the gays by death. Bro said, if I can't be happy, no. Nobody can ever be happy in the Greek stories. It is rare that you get to be a Greek hero and you get to be happy. Like, it kind of just does not go hand in hand, which is sort of wild when you think about it. Actually, I think that might actually be something, if I recall correctly, that is explored in Madeline Miller's The Song of Achilles, is the idea of, can you be a Greek hero and can you be happy? So it's like, not really. You can't. He almost never is portrayed as badass as he was. Artemis, correct. A lot of these characters suffer in modern adaptations, and it's because it's like, that's what that writer is going for. Yeah, they really made him come across as a soft boy. Katie, right, you're correct. Song of Achilles, it's not the only one. There's a lot of versions. I mean, you can look at the 2004 film Troy, where they made him like this younger cousin who's a newbie and is still learning. And it's like, they were cousins, but like, no, he was not a newbie. These people trained in warfare from the moment they were able to hold a spear, basically. Apollo heard bury your gaze and oh dear. Didn't Hector take Patroclus' armor when he defeated him? He tried to, I believe. Actually, no, did he take it? Actually, he might have. Oh my god, it's been so long since I read the Iliad. It doesn't even give Odie the kudos he deserves. Look, we know I've been having issues with some of the writing of Epic. There are many things with that. Patroclus was the older between the two, wasn't he? Actually, you know what? He might have been. Hold on. Let me double check how old Patroclus was, because I know that Achilles is notably young. He's the youngest of all the Greek warriors who were there at Troy, which is important to note. Which is why I say, like, these guys are all older than him. And while we don't get, like, exact ages, usually, I thought that was Hollywood trying to justify. No, they were related. This is not uncommon. Look, you don't want to know how related most of these characters were if and when they were being involved in shenanigans. You don't want to know who was the top or bottom. Achilles was the top. Nah, Achilles was the top. He was raised the son of Menoetius. Yes. I think he is meant to be like a little accidentally sending him to Peleus' father. He was named the squire, so role model for Achilles. Yes, so he's like a little bit older. They are still pretty close in age, but he was a handful of years older. Achilles wasn't huge like Ajax. Like when you say physically imposing, he was quite muscular. I mean, I think part of that comes from the fact that there's a story with Achilles where he is disguised as a woman because his mom doesn't want him to go to war because she knows that means he will die. So there's that, but not really. I mean, there's also, so no, he was physically fit. Like, don't get me wrong. Achilles equals anime protagonist. You know what? Honestly, Achilles would make a great anime protagonist so long as like you'd go the whole way with him also being tragic, which I mean many of them are. Yeah, so this part when he was dressed as a princess, but it was like they note that Odysseus is the one who actually finds him out. Like they send Odysseus there because they think he's there, but they can't prove it, and Odysseus knows how to trick him. And he notes that he can kind of tell by like the musculature of his hands and just like the way he seems a little more fit than all the girls there. And it's like, wait a minute. And he's veiled, so you can't really see his face. So that's the part of why they were getting away with it. And basically, if Thor can pull off a wedding dress, Achilles, yeah, I mean, there is an element of quasi-androgyny to some of these faces, but this has to do with like ancient beauty standards and how like those are so different from what we have today. Yeah, Odysseus was really good at sniffing out a trick because he was really good at pulling one. Aeschylus pro Achilles bottom, Plato pro Achilles top. Ancient philosophy has not evolved. Look, the philosophers argued with each other, so I mean, Plato and Aristotle literally had differing philosophies. So there you go. We're still at the reading section of the question part. We're still in the reading section. We're just getting tangentially sidetracked because we're talking about heroes of the Trojan War who have died because we go through a list of them. So Sunny Days, don't worry. You have not missed all the reading. We are on line like 130. It's true, Jay asked, I love that Odysseus basically said, if I can't get out of this war, no one is getting out of this war. It's partially they needed to kill Achilles. They were told they were not going to win the without Achilles. So that was sort of a, like, we need him. Mari, we talked about this earlier. I have finished the Thunder Saga. This whole story breathes. Yes, it does. And this is one of those things also where a lot of these tangents, it's like, this is stuff the Greeks would know. They had all this in the back of their head. Like, they knew the story at Troy. And the Odyssey takes into account that its audience knows. So, it's helpful. How did Antilochus die in the Trojan War? He was killed by a warrior named Memnon who fought for the Trojans. He's actually an Ethiopian, so they had foreigners helping them out, which is cool. The Odyssey is like 90% tangents, yes. So many tangents have to happen because there's so much context and other things, and you can get very sidetracked, like we were here. So, back to the reading. 9 years we wove a web of disaster for those Trojans, pressing them hard with every tactic known to man, and only after we slaved did Zeus award us victory. And no one there could hope to rival Odysseus. Not for sheer cunning. At every twist of strategy, he excelled us all. Your father, yes, if you are in fact his son. I look at you and a sense of wonder takes me. Your way with words, it's just like his. I'd swear no youngster could ever speak like you. So apt, so telling. As long as I and great Odysseus soldiered there, why, never once did we speak out at odds, neither in open muster nor in royal council. Forever one in mind, in judgment balanced, shrewd, we mapped our armies' plans so things might turn out best. But then, once we'd sacked King Priam's craggy city, Zeus contrived in his heart a fatal homeward run for all the Achaeans who were fools, at least, dishonest too. So many met a disastrous end, thanks to the lethal rage of the mighty father's daughter. This is how my bedtime stories went. Goes on full time to explain the question, yeah. So we're referencing here what happened with little Ajax. We talked about that, I think, in one of the other book clubs, maybe book one. So Nestor is basically saying, yeah, so some shit went down in the sacking of Troy, which isn't great, and so there were a lot of us who died, not just at Troy, but in the journey home, because the gods got mad. Now let's remember, Zeus, while technically being neutral, was sort of leaning on the side of the Trojans, so any Greek that stepped out of line, he was immediately like, consequences. But in this case, we are specifically talking, we talk about the lethal rage of the mighty father's daughter is very, super neutral, is specifically talking about Athena and the rage she had towards little Ajax for the sacrilege that he committed in her temple in Troy, trying to essay Cassandra in there. She was really understandably angry for that. And she was like, oh, hell nah. And so Zeus was like, you made my girl angry. You made my daughter angry. And let's remember, Zeus, for all of his messed up issues, absolute girl dad to Athena. That's his baby. She is his best girl. Nobody ever hurts Athena. Yeah, Maya, Cassandra deserved better. Cassandra, yeah, blame Apollo. Really blame Apollo for everything that happened to Cassandra. Justice for Cassandra. No, I agree. We blame Apollo. We blame Apollo for Cassandra. It's really all his fault. Is so valid. Good for him. He really is. Yeah, always blame Apollo. Yeah, Book Dragon. Cassandra really got the short end of the stick and then it got lit on fire. Yeah. I can't remember why Apollo hated her. Jazzy. He tried to seduce her and even gave her the power of prophecy. It was kind of like his way of trying to get her into bed with him, and she said no. Like, I'm a priestess, I will not. And so then he said, well, fine. Well, then nobody's gonna believe you, ever. You're gonna be always right, nobody will believe you, screw you. Zeus fathered him, so it's Zeus's fault, always blame Zeus. Blood feuds are a thing, that's true. But yeah, no, it's awful. Anyway. Athena set them feuding, Atreus' two sons. They summoned all the Achaeans' ranks to muster, rashly, just at sunset, no hour to rally troops. And in they straggled, sodden with wine, our heroes. Which, yeah, the sacking of Troy, let's note, was super brutal. And part of the sacking would be you would raid all the supplies. They all probably got drunk as hell. And should we blame Kronos for Zeus's birth? If you're going to blame Kronos, you then also have to blame Uranos. And like you can keep going back. Usually stuff filters down. Shit rolls downhill, if you will. So Doge, why Cassandra just say Troy wouldn't get burned to the ground? That horse doesn't have man inside. She couldn't lie. It's part of the thing was like she always spoke true prophecy. It was just that no one believed her. So, and also if you're an oracle type or a prophet type and you speak a lie, that is an insult to the gods. So she was truly between Scylla and Charybdis. She was in a awful rough place. So yeah, the sacking of Troy, if you want probably one of the most well-known depictions of the sacking of Troy, even though it is hugely, very deliberately anti-Greek. You can read the second book of the Aeneid. It's Aeneas, who is a hero from Troy, who is a son of Aphrodite and who escaped. Very explicitly details out the sacking of Troy because he got out during the sacking of Troy, and it's gives you an idea of kind of how violent it was. A sacking was always very violent, and again, stores would be raided, so they would eat afterwards, they'd eat and drink and just like celebrate the fact that they won. And I can imagine after 10 years of frustration having been built up trying to get into this city, the sacking of Troy was noted to be particularly violent. So yeah, of course, they're all drunk in a hot mess, and they all roll up like drunk and a hot mess to try and have a meeting. And like, that's just such a bad idea. It's technically Cassandra can steal and say yes, and no one would believe her. No, because saying that it wasn't just that anything she said was the truth. It was specifically prophecy. So it's talking about the future. So it's not like anything she said was always the truth. It was just a prophecy, which was a very like specific type of prediction of the future, what she would say was the truth, but no one would believe her. And also, Katie, right, you are correct. The movie Glass Onion, which is a great movie, the main character and her sister are named Helen and Cassandra. And it does make sense thematically in that movie. It is very fun. I loved it very much. I'm a fan of those movies, so I'm ready for the third one too. All right, so we're talking about the sons of Atreus are drunk, and Athena is coming in to be like, I'm pissed at all of you for the shit that went down in my temple. So now I was on your side, but now I'm mad. In they straggled, sodden with wine, our heroes. The brothers harangued them, told them why they'd met. A crisis. Menelaus urging the men to fix their minds on the voyage home across the sea's broad back. But it brought no joy to Agamemnon. Not at all. He meant to detain us there and offer victims, anything to appease Athena's dreadful wrath. Because of course, yes, human sacrifice is ultimately going to work out for you so well the first time. Let's do it again. It's always Agamemnon. Now, with the exception of saying offer victims, and it sounds like he's talking about people, I think in general he is probably talking actually about sacrificed animals. It's just fun to say, like, you dumbass human sacrifice. It's animal sacrifice is really what he's talking about. But to be fair, what Agamemnon is mentioning here, the idea that a god is mad at you, so try to appease them, that's normally the right call. Like, that's what you do. A god is pissed at you. Okay, I'm sorry. Here's some really, like, I am going to try to appease you. And meanwhile, Menelaus is like, I just want to go home. I got my wife. I want to get out. I'm done. So they're arguing about, like, when do we leave? And of course they're drunk, so everybody's in a bad mood, and it's like the middle of the night. Why are we having the conversation now? Nobody's gonna leave at night anyway, because you can't see a damn thing. So they're all arguing. Yes, Game Wizard Agamemnon, when at first you don't succeed, double down on the things that caused your problems in the first place. Correct. Although, to be fair, he doesn't know that yet. He's still at Troy. But we know. Yeah, Odysseus, take notes. So Marissa M., to be fair, we will get to that. That's something that doesn't appear in Epic. So Epic, the musical, very much does not talk about these things like these sacrifices to the gods and how important they were. It happens a lot in the Odyssey, including Odysseus and his men. They have bad winds. They stop on some random rock of an island and go, okay, well, Zeus, here's some supplies. We're going to burn it for you. Please give us better winds. He doesn't listen. He's not interested. But this was very common. This is what we do. If you have bad weather or the like and bad things are happening, I will appease a god. How do I appease the god, though? It's like they don't always tell you how you can make them not mad at you in that moment. So you're kind of shooting in the dark. And at this point, offering a good sacrifice would be the best they could do. And yes, animal sacrifice was big in the ancient world in general. They failed, but they were trying. Yes. Poor fool. He never dreamed Athena would not comply. The minds of the everlasting gods don't change so quickly. So the two of them stood there, wrangling back and forth, till the armies sprang up, their armor clashing, ungodly uproar. The two plans split the ranks. That night we barely slept, seething with hard feelings against our own comrades. For Zeus was brooding over us, poised to seal our doom. Let's see if you were licking. Sorry, I can hear Peg, and if she's ever licking her feet, I have to stop her. So, yeah. A child, yeah, is so wholesome. He's just like, oh, you sweet summer child, you silly fool. And that's how he sees them. In a way, they are children to him. They are old enough and young enough in a way to be his children, including Agamemnon and Menelaus, who are not the youngest ones there. This is, again, how old Nestor is. Again, at Troy, he was called Old Man Nestor. And this is 20 years after the start of that war. Man is old. So again, this is also showing how big this argument was, and also how the divine influence is just setting people who have just gone through an intense moment of bloodlust, is setting them on edge again. So everyone is, of course, frustrated and tired and snappy, and everything's becoming a mess, especially now that there's really no reason for them all to be teaming up still. The fact that they all came and teamed up was because they'd all made a pact. It was World War I, basically. Again, they all had signed a deal with each other, and so we're all allies for now, but then when it's over, everybody's back to squabbling, because these were all different kingdoms with their own agendas, and they weren't always friends. They were normally friendly with each other, and often a lot of them were all interrelated in some way, but they didn't necessarily get along. It was a political nightmare once the war was over. The fight is really sad when you think about the fact this is probably the last time Agamemnon and Menelaus ever see each other. It's true. It is sad when you think it is these brothers, and after they leave Troy, they're never going to see each other alive again. It is sad. Again, a lot of this, as much as we make fun of them, there's tragedy in a lot of this. Especially when, again, you understand the context and you know that, oh God, like, these are brothers and they're never going to see, and they've been through a lot. Again, the house of Atreus, Menelaus and Agamemnon went through a lot before even the Trojan War, and they're never going to see each other again. It's sad. And we will meet Menelaus. I believe it is actually the next book. We will meet Menelaus and Helen, and there is a sadness to Menelaus, which is clear. Because by this point, he's also found out his brother is dead. Which is just like, are you kidding? The poor guy, poor Menelaus, honestly cannot catch a break. Like, bro, what did Menelaus honestly do to anyone? He did, like, poor guy. That sadness is just the theme of the epics. Yeah, there's tragedy all around. You don't need to be in a Greek tragedy play for there to be tragedy. Just tragedy everywhere. With the amount of times Nestor is mentioned or hinted at as being old makes me wonder what he did to be able to live to such an old age, especially compared to all the other Greek heroes. Who knows, honestly? I don't know. You could maybe say partially because he was a son of Poseidon, but that usually doesn't, being a son or a child of a god doesn't normally guarantee you anything, because there's frankly so many of them in mythology. I don't know. He was just that cool and good of a dude. IDK, mate. Oh, big stretch. Ugh. At dawn, half of us hauled our ships down to the sea. We stowed our plunder, our sashed and lovely women, but half the men held back, camped on the beach, waiting it out for Agamemnon's next commands, while our contingent embarked. 1 second. Ma'am? If you can see her down there, she's rolling. She's being silly. Ma'am? Get over here. Come here. Your nails are clacking. She is having lots of fun. Come here. Up, up. I know you just want attention. Okay. All right. You gonna lie down now? Where are we? Eve, we are in around like line 170. Puppy. Yeah, okay. lie down. Okay, she's gonna nap here at my side. Must always be adorable. It's a rule. It's correct. She doesn't know how to not be adorable. Yes, the Dardanelles, correct. Where were we? While our contingent embarked, we pushed off and sailed at a fast clip as a god smoothed out the huge troughing swells. We reached Tenedos quickly, sacrificed to the gods, the crews keen for home. But a quick return was not in Zeus's plans. Not yet. That cruel power loosed a cursed feud on us once again. Some swung their rolling warships hard about. Odysseus sailed them back, that flexible, wily king, veering over to Agamemnon now to shore his fortunes up. But not I. Massing the ships that came in my flotilla, I sped away as the gods of mischief kept on brewing, dawning on me now. And Tydeus' fighting son Diomedes fled too, rousing all his comrades. Late in the day, red-haired Menelaus joined us, overtook us at Lesbos, debating the long route home, whether to head north or the top of rocky Chios, skirting Syria, keeping that island off to port, or run south of Chios by Mimas' gusty cape. We asked the god for a sign. He showed us one. He urged us to cut out on the middle passage, straight to Euboea now. Escape a catastrophe, fast as we could sail. Does that cruel power loosed a cursed feud on us once again mean another storm? Yes. He's also talking about how, again, the group of people split in half, quite literally. What he says? The cursed power, because we mentioned, loosed a cursed feud. It says some swung their rolling warships hard about. So it's basically some go some direction, some go the other. Some maybe try to turn back and others keep going. So Clover, the cruel power loosing a cursed feud is saying, but literally it caused more dissension in these ranks, which they don't really have a unified leader at this point. This is every king kind of just trying to get home, and they're all headed to different parts of Greece. And part of it also being he's sending more bad weather, which will put anybody in a bad mood because they really need good winds in order to steer these ships, as they don't really have like steering wheels the way like later ships would. So they really are dependent on good winds in order to try to navigate. Yay, we get to go home, Greek gods. The fuck you say? Correct, Game Wizard. Correct. The gods are like, oh, you're adorable, pumpkin. And for anybody who's curious, all of these places, Lesbos, Chios, Syria, Lake Euboea, these are just places. These are just islands. When he says gods, so he doesn't say gods of mischief, he just says gods' mischief. So G-O-D'(S) mischief. So he's just saying that Zeus is causing them problems because he is annoyed with them. They call it mischief, is just the word they're using. Why didn't they tap their shoes together and chant, there's no place like home? Did you cast the perfect winds for us on our journey home? No, correct. Oh, your cat Ringo says hi, Peg. There's a cat that says hi. She's very pleased, although she's trying to push me off this chair. Let's go home. Yeah, everybody, it's been 10 years. I just want to go home. Everyone in the Greek army. Yeah, everybody does just want to go home. Map. I just walked to Ithaca. I saw a map where Ithaca's right next to Troy. No, it's not actually. Sunny Days. Ithaca's on the other side of Greece. So he has to literally sail around Greece to get to it, which is why he like keeps overshooting where he needs to go. So he actually had a really long and difficult journey because he has to go all the way around Greece. It's on the other side of Greece. So Sunny Days, he can't just walk to Ithaca. There's also the fact that the Troy, which is over in like Asia Minor, as it gets called then, is not landlocked with Europe proper. Like there's what, I mean, I guess technically you probably could go an extremely long way around, but no, you're going to use ships. How far can you overshoot? Oh, Emma, with the way that people speculate his route went, because obviously we don't have necessarily specific locations for all the places that it is, and obviously the different maps of the route Odysseus takes, as Hematus is saying, are wild. He overshoots so hard. It's ridiculous. It's all about being overshot and then blown about. Um, it's absurd. And also talking about Tydeus' son Diomedes is another very well-known hero of the Trojan War. He was known for being extremely aggressive. Since everybody says we did want to do the Iliad after the Odyssey, Diomedes will feature in the Iliad very notably. He was so like aggressive and would get so frenzied on the battlefield. Like he was like, imagine like the Tasmanian devil. He was a wild dude. He very readily did, and arguably pointing towards his potential, like he's not even thinking when he's fighting. He actively has no problem when encountering a god in combat, goes, bet. Oh, that's Ares? Bet. I'm gonna fight, don't care. Or he sees Aphrodite jumps into the field to rescue her son Aeneas and carry him off. He's like, gonna follow her, don't care. And that even made the gods go, whoa, okay, buddy, this is almost going a little too far, calm down. But we talk about Diomedes. Diomedes, depending on who you read, also has an interesting end, but it tends to be pretty dramatic, and part of that is usually said to be related to things that happen in the Temple of Athena. While he is not as bad as little Ajax, he does kind of take the Palladium, which is a famous statue that's in there, and nonsense goes down and it causes him problems. Yeah, Diomedes is a very come at me bro dude. He is just like, he's very akin to Ares in many ways. They very much both have this come at me bro attitude. The big difference being though, if Diomedes got injured, he didn't care. He just kept going. If Ares gets injured, he screams like a toddler. Yeah, Diomedes really did hard carry during the time Achilles was sitting out in the Iliad. Like, Diomedes took full advantage of that, him and Ajax. Wait, so is Odysseus not actually a good sailor ship captain, or was it just that hard to navigate back home? So, Katie, that's a very good question. One, it is just that difficult to navigate back home. Naval technology in this particular era of the Bronze Age of Greece is still, I mean, reasonably new. It is pretty nascent. There was an awful, you could argue, lot of guesswork that was going on in how they would get to places. While he had an idea kind of where he needed to head, at least probably in direction with relation to the sun, like, they don't really have all of the technology that would be there later. And so he was a reasonably, I mean, because especially he was an island king. I mean, Ithaca is an island. The only way you're going to get to mainland or basically anywhere else that's not Ithaca is you have to use a boat. He was a reasonably good sailor. It was just very difficult weather he ended up getting, and it was just a difficult journey. So this idea of the Nostos is usually that it is a difficult journey, and getting home unscathed is just like, yo, what magic is that? Because all of the Greek heroes ultimately did have difficult journeys getting home. The sailing back from Troy was not easy. Ares is the trust fund jock in fancy colleges. It's true. Except his daddy is like not impressed with him. Most of the other Olympians are not huge fans of Ares. They're just kind of like, they roll their eyes at him. He's kind of the butt of all the jokes, really. Age of sail is calculated about 10% of vessels did not make it to their destination. This is well before the age of sail. Yeah, nascent naval technology. And I'm not an expert on this, so anybody who happens to be like ancient maritime like warfare and all of that, who's got a better view, excellent. I'm not a super expert on that. I just know very difficult. Lots of side quests. Yes, that was kind of the idea of the Nostos, even though you really just wanted to get home. Question if you know the answer, because I can't find it. Do you know why Odysseus and his crew crossed the Ionian instead of taking that right turn along the coastline towards home? So, Book Dragon, part of that is implied to have been the fact they have bad winds. We'll get to there when Odysseus starts telling his story, but that's not until like book 8 or 9. They have really bad weather from the jump. When they, even obviously as it's noting, even now from when they set off from Troy, but also when he splits from the others, like they just have such bad weather. The wind is blowing them about, and they may not always realize just how far off course they're getting blown, because there's a lot of it's no reference. Like personally, where me, I like, if I could possibly try, I would be trying to hug the coast of Greece as much as I could, but it just probably wasn't an option for him. Ares, I remember he got trapped in a jar. Kitty, I know. Yeah, he got trapped in a jar, and it's still one of the best stories ever. It's why Odysseus succeeded so well against the suitors. He did all the side quests before the main quest. I mean, yeah, you can argue that. He just also was that much of a better warrior than they were. And it was his rightful place. Like, the gods, frankly, would have made sure he won that fight regardless. But, yeah. If you have bad weather, go to Scylla. Wait, what? Even much later with the Vikings, seafaring wasn't that well understood, which is one of the reasons why people found them so scary. Yeah, the sea was a scary place. There was a lot of the unknown with relation to the sea and the ocean. It was a necessity. I read the seas around the Peloponnese were terrible to navigate, though. Lots of bad weather and currents, which is why the Greeks did build a land bridge near Corinthus. Yeah. Mason jar greater than Greek god. It was like a much bigger kind of jar, like a massive like amphoras type. Yeah, bad weather, difficult like sailing. So it's like the fact that the Greeks were as good as sailing as they seem to have been was impressive. Yeah, the sea is still scary. Yeah, you couldn't pay me to go down there. No thanks. The sea is legitimately scary. Like, look, we look at them and go, no, legit, Greeks. Yeah, no, we get it. We get it. We fully get it. Yeah, thalassophobia aside, everybody's just like, no, we get it. We get it. We get it. Oh, anyway. A shrilling wind came up, stiff, driving us on we raced, over the sea lanes rife with fish, and we made Geraestz's point in the dead of night. Many thighs of bulls we offered Poseidon there. Thank God we'd crossed that endless reach of sea. Then, on the fourth day out, the crews of Diomedes, breaker of horses, moored their balanced ships at Argos' port. But I held course for Pylos, yes, and never once did the good, strong wind go limp from the first day that God unleashed its blast. And so, dear boy, I made it home from Troy, in total ignorance, knowing nothing of their fates, the ones who stayed behind. Who escaped with their lives and who went down? But still, as I've gathered by hearsay, sitting here in my own house, that you'll learn. It's only right. I'll hide nothing now. They say the Myrmidons, obviously as we know, followers of Achilles, those savage spearmen led by the shining son of lion-hearted Achilles, now being led by Neoptolemus as Achilles has passed, falls only right that they go to him, and Neoptolemus' name literally means new war, Neoptolemus, so he was a very good warrior as well, not quite as good as Achilles, but Achilles was a one of a kind. Travelled home unharmed. Philoctetes, the gallant son of Poias, safe as well. So Philoctetes was it was him or his father, I believe, was actually kind of a companion follower of Heracles. And it was Philoctetes, through his father, who was gifted the bows and arrows of Heracles, these arrows having been dipped in the poison of the Hydra, also called the Hydra. So they were extreme, even a scratch could kill you. If like the arrow didn't even need to be a deadly hit, it could have grazed you while it was going by and you're toast. That is how deadly the poison of the Hydra was. Part of why Heracles dipped his arrows in them. Dude, look, was smart. Dude recognized a good upmanship to his weaponry when he saw one. Heimatus, Disney's Phil. Yeah, so Philoctetes is a man, he's not a satyr. But that is where they got the idea for that character, except Philoctetes was just like a hella good warrior. So the story with Philoctetes was when they were on the way to Troy, because obviously it's a whole caravan, huge flotilla, a lot of people to try and get to one place. It was a journey already. Philoctetes had gotten injured, and his wound apparently started to go bad and rot a bit, and it stank so bad. They just left him on an island and dipped. Literally just abandoned him on an island, and they continued on to Troy. And it was not until after Achilles had died and they were just like, oh shit, what do? They got told that if you want to at least defeat Paris, who had killed Achilles, so let's get revenge for Achilles in that way, you need to go get Phil, because you need the bow and the arrows. And he was a great archer. Obviously, he trained with that bow and those arrows. Ancient healthcare. We are past the age of Asclepius. Who got punished by Zeus for trying to raise the dead. So Odysseus is the one who goes and gets Philoctetes and has to do the whole like, so hey bro, sorry we like left you here and dipped and like ghosted you for 9 years, our bad. But this speaks to how good of a talker Odysseus was. He was able to go there and convince Philoctetes to come back, and Philoctetes is usually cited as the one who kills Paris. uh, which frankly we're not mad at. Yeah, literally Philoctetes is the Monty Python skit, I'm not dead yet, I'm feeling better. Ischemios, like ischemia. I don't really remember what they say specifically is going on with this moon, but apparently it was just nasty. And mind you, this story I've reserved for my grandpa telling me, and he told it pretty much just like that his wound smelled so bad they just dipped, and I was like, really? And then they were like, oh, that's literally the story. So they bring him back, and he helps them win, and obviously he's much better. So he's saying that, like, oh yeah, by the way, Philoctetes, that guy we left and then brought back, big apology, he did well. Philoctetes, yes, said in the Disney film, you think Philoctetes. A bit of tomato pronunciation. I'm sure mine's not even perfect most of the time, so yeah. Oh, Odysseus would make a great salesman. Literally. Very literally. Where Henry VIII got his inspiration for not treating his leg wound. Hey, Modest, I hate that joke. It's so funny. Oh my god. You can tell Nestor isn't allowed to tell war stories given how long-winded he is. I bet his sons in the room rolled their eyes when Telemachus asked about his dad. Maybe, but also, like, these were great stories. The tales of the heroes of Troy. And this is coming from a guy like Nestor who's seen it all. Seen so much of it. They are probably rolling their eyes a little bit because they've probably heard a lot of this before, but for Telemachus, he is locked in. Because he's heard none of this, really. He needs to know. And he's getting it from, from the horse's mouth, if you will. Oh, Achromatic Hound. We're not done with reading time. There's just lots of tangents in this one. Because there's lots of stuff going on. Yeah, I can't believe Nestor was genuinely at Troy. Nah, yeah, he was. He was also in Argonaut. Like, the man had a life and a half. He's really, you could argue, one of the only Greek heroes who ends up with, like, a really just solid ending. Like, because he just pisses nobody off. Oh, God, here we go again. 10 years of listening to the same thing. Achromatic Hound, if you've got your own copy, we're here around, like, line 210-ish. Yes, telling stories as people did before TVs and movies and even before books. I grew up with people telling stories. So for me, I'm like, oh, totally normal. Yes, tell me stories. Odysseus, take notes. Idomeneus brought his whole contingent back to Crete, all who'd escaped the war. The sea snatched none from him. So Idomeneus, king of Crete, he is the grandson of King Minos and Queen Pasiphae, who are famous for the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. Excuse me. And so that actually also puts him in the same genealogical tree as Helios. Helios popping up all over this narrative. So Idomeneus was one of Agamemnon's most trusted advisors. He was a primary defender of the Greek forces, especially when other heroes were injured. He was that guy who would 100% step up and keep everybody, like, safe. In fact, it said he was able to briefly repulse an attack led by Hector. So, like, the guy was good because Hector was obviously the top fighter on the side of the Trojans, and Hector was so good the Greeks were like, nah, Hector is awesome. Like, honestly, no shit towards Hector. That guy is good. The only guy who was going to beat Hector was Achilles. So was this around the time the Minoans vanished off the face of the earth? So yeah, the Minoan culture was definitely sort of in the decline because it and the Mycenaeans sort of overlap. And so, yeah. So Idomeneus is also one of the heroes who actually was in the Trojan horse itself. So he was very much a part of the sacking of Troy and of the whole horse shenanigans. Is there a god of storytelling? So not specifically. Apollo and Dionysus kind of have crossover there, and then you have the Muses who are related to that, but there's no god that is specifically related to storytelling. I guess you could also argue that Hermes kind of, because they all are related to things like theater and tales and music and or oration, but the Muses are probably the closest you would get, and even they are very specifically sectioned out to like what they kind of oversee. Oh, you just finished the Nymph and the Shipwreck. Usagi Kasanagi, you are further than we are. Yeah. So now Idomeneus kind of has his own story. The writer Apollodorus actually writes that Idomeneus ended up getting driven out of Crete by his foster son. So his throne got usurped by a guy named Leucus, or Leucus, who usurped the throne and actually seduced Idomeneus' wife and then murdered her. And this was after Idomeneus kind of got kicked out. It's like really sad. I know there's an opera called Idomeneo, King of Crete, that I can think of that I've heard, though I can't remember the composer. It might be Mozart, I think. So yes, again, we're kind of going down a list of all these famous heroes of the Trojan War. Because this is stuff that people who knew the story of Troy would probably know, and they could be like, oh, that guy, yeah, I know that guy. This is name dropping for the audience here. What Greek god's domain would fit video board mobile games? Probably a handful of them, to be honest. Musical theater's Apollo and Dionysus shaking hands? Yeah, kinda. Glucose, yeah, no. Leucus. Leucus, I think. That's a big I think from me. It is Mozart. Thank you, Calliste. I was pretty sure Idomeneo, King of Crete, was Mozart. I've heard it like once, but it was a very long time ago. Which is where, when I first heard of Idomeneus and this, I was like, the opera? I was a really strange kid. Just FYI. Anyway. But Atreus' son, Agamemnon, you yourselves, even in far-off Ithaca, must have heard how he returned. How Aegisthus hatched the king's horrid death. But what a price he paid in blood, in suffering. Ah, how fine it is when a man is brought down to leave a son behind. Orestes took revenge. He killed that cunning, murderous Aegisthus, who killed his famous father. And if you want to know that particular aspect of the House of Atreus, the tragedy Agamemnon by Aeschylus very specifically covers that event. It's a great play. If you ever get the chance to read the Oresteia, as it's called, which is a trilogy of plays by Aeschylus, which is about kind of this ending of the House of Atreus. I really recommend, because it's super dramatic and so cool, and like, they're a hot mess, but you're just like, damn, the truly Greek tragedy was just like peak drama. I have the spelling wrong, but House of Atreus, always the problem, never the solution. Yeah. And yes, the Greeks are the drama. Real Housewives who, yeah, they got nothing on these guys. Like, look, I remember once reading about like the Plantagenets, and I thought they were messy ass bitches. I don't even know if they got anything on the House of Atreus, and that says a lot. Ugh. Truly, gossip is the oldest form of storytelling, yeah. And this was part of Xenia. A lot of it was trading tales of stuff you'd seen and experienced. So it was just like literally gossiping, if you think about it. But like, you didn't want to tell lies, obviously. I would watch Real Housewives of Ancient Greeks. It's just called Greek mythology. But yeah, no, I would too. I'd be like, oh my God, they're the messy family for their time period. You know what's sad? They're one of them. Most of the family trees are really messy. Like Theseus and Jason, and of which Nestor is a part, the Jason one, and the Atreus, like, they're all a mess. Oh, my channel. Ah, they're all such a mess. And you, my friend, how tall and handsome I see you now. Be brave, you too, so men to come will sing your praises down the years. Telemachus, weighing the challenge closely, answered, O Nestor, son of Neleus, Achaea's pride and glory, what a stroke of revenge that was! All Achaeans will spread Orestes' fame across the world, a song for those to come. If only the gods would arm me in such power, I'd take revenge on the lawless, brazen suitors riding roughshod over me, plotting reckless outrage. But for me, the gods have spun out no such joy, for my father or myself. I must bear up, that's all. They all need family therapy. Correct. And the old charioteer replied, Now that you mention it, dear boy, I do recall a mob of suitors, they say, besets your mother there in your own home, against your will, and plots your ruin. Tell me, though, do you let yourself be so abused? Or do people round about, stirred up by the prompting of some god, despise you now? Who knows if he will return some day to take revenge on all their violence, single-handed perhaps, or with an Argive army at his back. If only the bright-eyed goddess chose to love you, just as she lavished care on brave Odysseus years ago, in the land of Troy where we Achaeans struggled. I've never seen the immortals show so much affection as Pallas openly showed him, standing by your father. If only she'd favor you, tend you with all her heart, many a suitor would then lose all thought of marriage. Blot it out forever. Yeah, let yourself be abused. Nestor's basically saying, what the fuck are you doing over there? Like, what's going on? So Audrey, we are like around line 255-ish. Nestor's essentially asking, what the hell is going on in Ithaca? Like, are you doing this on purpose? Are you not strong enough? Like, do the people on Ithaca not like you? Like, what's going on? Because they hear tales, but they don't know exactly what's happening. Yeah, Xenia only goes so far, my son. Yeah, he's pointing out, he's like, if this is such a Xenia violation, what are you doing? And he's trying to do it in a, I mean, this is classic, I mean, Nestor showing really how wise and how skilled he is he's asking him, but he's not trying to basically say, what the fuck are you doing? He's doing it very politely and with what seems to be sincere concern. Telemachus is 20, he doesn't have any deeds to his name, and he's coming because he wants to know about his dad. So Nestor likes this kid, but there's also a little bit of political gamesmanship going on here because Telemachus is like, how do I answer this? Which is part of why he spoke to Athena in the guise of mentor earlier. And at this moment, he probably still thinks that it's mentor. Just going like, how do I talk to this guy? This is diplomacy, even though he's coming for a personal matter. He has to tread carefully because of how much he is potentially representing the throne of Ithaca and the kingdom, really, of Ithaca. Yeah, he's wondering how the heck Zeus hasn't smote them for a Xenia violation yet. Yeah, Nestor's just sort of like, what is going on? Couldn't hide her favoritism from anyone. Jay, correct. Athena very much valued how clever Odysseus was, and, you know, he was noted to be so freaking clever. Like, that was his thing. So Jazzy, at what age would a Greek hero be expected to have feats to their name? By 20, you should have already started. Like, you should have already started participating in something, whether it be, you know, feats of arms, hunts, adventures, finding sparring matches. Like, you should have started to build a rep already. So Telemachus is a bit behind, and he's kind of been stuck, and it is a bit tough there. Ithaca is sort of like, we'll call it the backwoods. It's a small little island, and he's had to deal with the issue with the suitors, and he's trying to keep his mom safe. So Telemachus has really had all of the odds stacked against him here, but he should have already kind of started. Usually probably in their teens. They're already starting to at least head out and get their names out there, even if it's small stuff. Yeah, Athena seeing smart boy Odysseus yells out, "Deb's mine!" Yeah, basically. And she shows up for a lot of the heroes. Like, she sees a Greek hero of note, she stops and goes, "I'm listening. Like, I see you." My good sweet boy, are you stupid? He's got some questions. I mean, the fact, though, that the suitors have laid siege, but that no violence has erupted would not be lost on Nestor. He'd be just like, what's going on that, like, there hasn't been some sort of violent overthrow? Like, you've managed to maintain a weird sort of detente. Like, we're all just chilling. So what's going on? That does speak to the shrewdness of Telemachus and of Penelope, that they've had to walk a tightrope in that palace. A groomer, but she's not doing it now. Okay, I mean, look. Team Odie's family, kind of basically. She also likes Penelope. She likes smart people. She's like Batman with talented orphan children. Yes. These are all her, like, various Robins she's trying to collect, though most of them inevitably disappoint her. Because humans are messy. Do you think Athena prefers Odie or Telemachus? Ultimately, probably Odysseus, if only because he was so goddamn smart. Telemachus is shrewd, but Odysseus is a different level. I think she likes all the heroes that she deals with, you know, until and when they piss her off. And both Odysseus and Telemachus never really seem to do anything to really upset Athena, so she likes them both, but I think she values Odysseus's intellect a bit more. It's hard not to disappoint Athena. It's hard for humans to not disappoint the gods in general. Being disappointed humans acted like humans. That they made dumb choices, essentially, yeah. That they give in to their flaws, yeah. She does put Penelope to sleep a lot, and a lot of that seems to be a kind of mercy. She's giving her rest. Which, poor Penelope, like, woman probably hasn't had a good night's rest in 20 years. She's giving that to Penelope. Really, that's a gift. Do we learn what happens to Telemachus after the Odyssey? There is, a lot of people have asked, there's a famous epic called, lost epic, actually, called the Telegony or the Telegony, that kind of deals with Telemachus, and we have some understanding from that, but not too much is written. Again, this is sort of the last stage of the heroes. The children, aka Orestes, Telemachus, Neoptolemus, a lot of that generation, there's not too many stories about. Yeah, no, Penelope is constantly stressed, but honestly, standing tall, and she's great for that. Penelope is the goat. Penelope is fabulous. Let's see. Never, your majesty, Telemachus countered gravely. That will never come to pass, I know. What you say dumbfounds me, it staggers imagination. Hope as I will, that day will never dawn, not even if the gods should will it so. Telemachus! Pallas Athena broke in sharply, her eyes afire. What's this nonsense slipping through your teeth? It's light work for a willing god to save a mortal even half the world away. Myself, I'd rather sail through years of trouble and labor home and see that blessed day, than hurry home and die at my own hearth, like Agamemnon, killed by Aegisthus' cunning, by his own wife. But the great leveler, death. Not even the gods can defend a man, not even one they love, that day when fate takes hold and lays him out at last. Mentor, wise Telemachus said, distraught as we are for him, let's speak of this no more. My father's return, it's inconceivable now. Long ago, the undying gods have sealed his death, his black doom. But now, there's another question I would put to Nestor. Nestor excels all men for sense and justice, his knowledge of the world. 3 generations he has ruled, they say. And to my young eyes he seems a deathless god. Nestor, son of Neleus, tell me the whole story. How did the great king Agamemnon meet his death? Where was Menelaus? What fatal trap did he set, that treacherous Aegisthus, to bring down a man far stronger than himself? Was Menelaus gone from Achaean Argos, roving the world somewhere, so the coward found the nerve to kill the king? Which translation would you suggest for the Oresteia? The translation that I have read was done by Richmond Lattimore, which is a really good translation. Man's death is very, he had it coming. Yeah, but then again, the moment that happened, so did Aegisthus, and then ultimately so did Clytemnestra, so everybody sort of had it coming at the end of the day, because of stuff that they do. And old Nestor, the noble charioteer, replied, Gladly, my boy. I'll tell you that story first to last. Right you are. You guess what would have happened if red-haired Menelaus, arriving back from Troy, had found Aegisthus alive in Agamemnon's palace. No barrow piled high on the earth for his dead body. No, the dogs and the birds would have feasted on his corpse, sprawled on the plain outside the city gates. And no one, no woman in all of Achaea would have wept a moment. Such a monstrous crime the man contrived. But there we were, camped at Troy, batting out the long, hard campaign, while he, at his ease, at home in the depths of Argos stallion country. He lay siege to the wife of Agamemnon, luring, enticing her with talk. At first, true, she spurned the idea of such an outrage. Clytemnestra, the queen, her will was faithful still. And there was a man, what's more, a bard close by, to whom Agamemnon, setting sail for Troy, gave strict commands to guard his wife. But then, that day the doom of the gods had bound her to surrender. Aegisthus shipped the bard away to a desert island, marooned him there, sweet prize for the birds of prey, and swept her off to his own house, lover lusting for lover. And many thigh bones he burned on the gods' holy altars, many gifts he hung on the temple walls, gold, brocades, in thanks for a conquest past his maddest hopes. Yeah, which wasn't gonna work. Like, was so not gonna work. I mean, honestly, you could argue they're giving Clytemnestra credit here. They're just like, yo, it's all Aegisthus' fault. Now, Aegisthus kind of has a cursed existence regardless. He is a product of incest, which was like super icky to them. Super, super icky. And he is just noted to be terrible. All these mentions of thigh bones, so the gods have a thing for thighs. Yeah, they do. They're thigh lovers, good cuts of meat too, tasty smelling, lots of fat. Laid siege to wife is such a line, yeah, it's true. So the fact that he didn't go to Troy tells you, like, he's cowardly, he's not a good fighter. The Greeks would have looked down on him, absolutely, without question. Aegisthus is just kind of look, Aegisthus is awful. Like, we may not like Agamemnon, but Aegisthus is also awful, also gross. Like, he basically just finds out that his grandfather is his father, and therefore his mom is his sister. Like, he has the awful sort of Oedipal moment and just goes, bet that's totally fine. I'm just gonna go kill the sons of the guy who you rightfully stole the throne from. It. Like, again, messiness in the house of Atreus. Clytemnestra's taste in men leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah. Sunny Days, you asked, how does Athena put Penelope to sleep? She can call on help from Hypnos and be able to put her into sleep. Yeah, no, this moment when Agamemnon is not the biggest piece of shit in the room. Yeah, this is a bigger piece of shit. Like, he's just worse at, like, look, Agamemnon is a problem, but this is just like, ugh. Ugh. Yeah, Clytemnestra absolutely needed better men in her life. It's just a mess. And she was already angry at him for the sacrifice of Iphigenia, but shacking up with Aegisthus is also a recipe for getting the gods not on your side, because eventually she takes Aegisthus to the marriage bed, which is just like, you did what? Like, that was the moment you got even Hera going like, I was mad at Agamemnon, but I'm mad at you too. Everybody on my shit list now. Yeah, if Agamemnon's telling you to chill, you did something wrong. Run away with Cassandra. Cassandra's not really on her side either. Poor Cassandra just gets caught in the middle of the whole thing. I mean, Clytemnestra murders Cassandra, so she cuts her with an axe. Just a hot mess. A hot mess. Every time. It's just a mess. When is everybody not pissing off Hera who isn't Odysseus? Good question. Good question. Yeah, he puts the blame on the gods and fate and not Clytemnestra. Like I said, Nestor gives Clytemnestra quite a bit of slack. He just says, look, she was manipulated by Aegisthus, who is the actual, like, ew factor. And the fact that the House of Atreus just, like, being doomed, and, like, there were machinations potentially beyond her control, but at the end of the day, she does make choices. Choices are made by humans. As much as they can say, like, there's fate and it's hard to pretty much ever buck against fate, humans make their own choices. But he blames the men. He specifically blames Aegisthus a lot, obviously, because Aegisthus is kind of the mastermind behind the whole thing. And then also he just looks at Aegisthus like, you were such a piece of shit, you couldn't even come fight in Troy. Like, are you even a man? He's like, I'm fucking old and I went to Troy and you couldn't get your ass in Troy? Yeah, another example of Zeus saying, oh, sure, blame us for your shit. Yeah, I mean, that line in book 1, I forever cite it, going, so true. Ugh. Now we, you see, were sailing home from Troy in the same squadron, Menelaus and I, comrades in arms from years of war. But as we rounded holy Soinion, Athens' headland, Lord Apollo attacked Atrides' helmsman. Aye, with his gentle shafts he shot the man to death. An iron grip on the tiller, the craft scudding fast. Phrontis, Onetor's son, who excelled all men alive at steering ships when gales bore down in fury. So basically, Apollo, butthurt that the Trojans lost, shows up and goes, you know what, I'm still mad, and just kills basically their best helmsman. Kills Menelaus' top helmsman, the guy who was helping to steer. So yes, Clover, why did Apollo kill Phrontis? He sided with the Trojans, and he was mad. He was big mad. Look, the Greek gods are always bitter and petty. In all senses of the word and by all definitions, no, this is not a man. I don't know how to spell it. Aegisthus. Oh my god, I swear I can spell. Man is damn good at steering ships. Yes, Phrontis was like, if you got named and said you were that good at steering ships, you were that good at steering ships. And Apollo went, fuck you. Yeah, we shall not interfere with mortal affairs. Apollo, not at all. Shunk. Oh, yeah, you know, the gods never chill out. They never chill out. So Menelaus, straining to sail on, was held back till he could bury his mate with fitting rites. But once he'd got off too, ploughing the wine-dark sea in his ribbed ships, and made a run for Malea's beetling cape, far-seeing Zeus decided to give the man rough sailing. Poured a hurricane down upon him, shrilling winds, giant rearing whitecaps, monstrous, mountains high. There, at a stroke, he cut the fleet in half, and drove one wing to Crete, where Cydonians made their homes along the Iordanus River. Now, there's a sheer cliff plunging steep to the surf at the farthest edge of Gortine, out on the mist-bound sea, where the south wind piles breakers, huge breakers, left out at the headland's horn towards Phaistos, with only a low reef to block the crushing tides. In they sailed and barely escaped their death. The ship's crews, that is. The rollers smashed their hulls against the rocks, but as for the other 5 with pitch-black prows, the wind and current swept them on toward Egypt. So yes, Egypt. Egypt was absolutely a place. Now, look, Egypt had been existing for a long time before this period of Greece. Like, I always said, like, think of classical Greece. So, like, we think about classical Greece, like Athens and all of that, the way they thought about what we call ancient Egypt. There is, like, literally, like, several thousand years of Egyptian history that's been going on long before this part. So they get put out to Egypt. Above, they are pretty easily described and understood by humans. Menelaus is probably the nicest of the Greek heroes at Troy too. Yeah, but he was part of the reason they were there. Like, they were all there to get Menelaus' wife back, so Zeus just like, I'm bored. Why was Apollo even on the Trojan side? Well, Artemis, he actually helped to build the walls at Troy. So he kind of had an affinity for the Trojans in that regard. Hestia is probably the only god that is chill. Hestia and like Hades are kind of the only chill of the gods. Of the Olympians, yeah, Hestia is kind of the only one. When we include Hades, who's not usually considered an Olympian because he doesn't live on Olympus, yeah, those two are kind of the chillest. Egypt is also a really old civilization. Yes. Why was Poseidon not? Why was Poseidon not what? On the side of the Trojans? If I recall the myth correctly, they didn't give him proper, like, tribute compensation for the work he did in assisting to build the walls, and so he held that against the Trojans. So he absolutely sided with the Greeks. There aren't much stories about Hestia, though, right? Yeah, correct. There's not too many myths about Hestia in particular. She certainly was very widely worshipped, and there were quite a few cults and such devoted to her, but actual stories, not that many. So Menelaus, amassing a hoard of stores and gold, was off cruising his ships to foreign ports of call when I just this hatched his vicious work at home. 7 years he lorded over Mycenae, rich in gold, once he'd killed Agamemnon. He ground the people down, but the 8th year ushered in his ruin. Prince Orestes, home from Athens, yes, he cut him down, that cunning, murderous Aegisthus, who'd killed his famous father. Vengeance done, he held a feast for the Argives to bury his hated mother, craven Aegisthus too. The very day Menelaus arrived, lord of the war cry, freighted with all the wealth his ships could carry. So basically, Menelaus and Helen were just kind of like chilling around Egypt, getting rich and hanging out, relaxing. You could call it like a second honeymoon for them. It's been 10 years. They were catching up on some shit, and they come home and they find out what happened to my brother. Like, oh my God. So very sad. Very, very sad. So you, dear boy, take care. Don't rove from home too long, too far, leaving your holdings unprotected. Crowds in your palace so brazen they'll carve up all your wealth, devour it all, and then your journey here will come to nothing. Still, I advise you, urge you to visit Menelaus. He's back from abroad at last, from people so removed you might abandon hope of ever returning home, once the winds had driven you that far off course. Into a sea so vast not even cranes could wing their way in 1 year's flight. So vast it is, so awesome. Honestly, the fact that Menelaus was on an adventure like that, like his Nostos, absolutely top-notch. He had a great Nostos. His return home, he traveled through Egypt, got hella rich, and like saw stuff and came home. He came back, yes, to sadness, but Sparta was still intact. He was totally fine. And demonstrated great seamanship that they went that far and were also able to make their way back. Is Egyptian religion or belief ever mentioned in Homer or Greek myth? I just remember they'll say, like, men will get rich there in Odysseus' stories. They don't talk specifically about any of the Egyptian gods or the like. They know they're different, but they pretty much kind of leave it at that. Are we judging distance by cranes? Yeah, we are. That was, like, they judge distance by things like arrow shots, birds flying. Like, distance gets measured by so many strange ways in the stories. I'm gonna watch that guy die. Yeah, Usagi Kasanagi, to be fair, the thing with Helen is she's kind of magicked by Aphrodite and kidnapped. So she doesn't really get a lot of choice in that matter. And by the time, at least, we hit the Iliad and the like she's pissed at the whole thing. And she chose Menelaus of all the suitors. It was Helen had her pick, and she picked Menelaus. And it seems that in general, I mean, other than, yeah, getting basically kidnapped by the Trojans, they had a reasonably happy marriage. Menelaus didn't come home to 108 dudes trying to marry his wife. Measuring by birds, Americans measuring by football fields. Yeah, we all find our weird ways to measure things. So, off you go with your ships and shipmates now. Or, if you'd rather go by land, there's team and chariot. My son's at your service, too. And they'll escort you to sunny Lacedaemon, home of the red-haired king. Press him yourself to tell the whole truth. He'll never lie. That man is far too wise. So he closed as the sun set and darkness swept across the earth, and the bright-eyed goddess Pallas spoke for all. There was a tale, old soldier, so well told. Come, cut out the victims' tongues and mix the wine. So cutting out the victims' tongues, we are specifically referring to the tongues of the sacrificed animals, which were always reserved for the gods. And so tongues, very much like thigh and thigh bone, were considered good cuts of meat to give to the gods. Yeah, no, tongue is very much, it was a delicacy. See, Mari, how far / how long do you think she was under the spell of the gods? Before the war, after, in the midst? I believe she was manipulated to leave and couldn't go back home, but when was she like, oh shit? So there is a point in the Iliad where Helen gets mad at Aphrodite over the whole thing. I mean, granted, that is the final year, really, of the war. So there was probably a point in Troy where she realized, like, what even happened? Why am I here? What's going on? But at that point, she was stuck. Like, she really was not able to leave. They basically, Paris and the others kind of had her almost under lock and guard. Like, they were not going to let her leave, especially when a conflict then arises out of it. And everybody's sense of, like, honor and shit is on the line, and it's spiraled so heavily out of control. And there was a point that she realized, but she was stuck. She couldn't leave. She couldn't find a way to escape. She just, yeah, Helen was in a golden cage. Book Dragon, that's a good way to describe it. She was screwed. And it was by no fault of her own, which is why it's so easy that, like, the Greeks don't blame her for what happens. They blame Paris, and Menelaus takes her back pretty much no questions asked. And they, you know, go on and live the rest of their lives pretty much in peace in Sparta. Helen was really angry, but mostly resigned to it at this point. Yeah, there was a point, yeah, as we would say, she realized, like, she sucked. Like, she's stuck, sorry. That, like, everything sucks, there's nothing she can do, and hence she bemoans her fate, and she does it to Aphrodite, but she does it in such language that Aphrodite tells her, you're gonna shut up, or I'll make your life worse. Like, I'll make you truly the most hated woman in the world. And then Helen's like, well, shit, okay, fine, I guess my life can get worse. Yeah, many modern interpretations are extremely harsh to Helen. Let's see, cut out the victims' tongues and mix the wine. So once we've poured libations out to the Sea Lord and every other god, we'll think of sleep. High time. The light's already sunk in the western shadows. It's wrong to linger long at the gods' feast. We must be on our way. Zeus's daughter, they all hung closely on every word she said. Heralds sprinkled water over their hands for rinsing. The young men brimmed the mixing bowls with wine. They tipped first drops for the god in every cup, then poured full rounds for all. They rose and flung the victims' tongues on the fire and poured libations out. When they'd poured and drunk to their heart's content, Athena and Prince Telemachus both started up to head for their ship at once. So talking about here, the always reserved for the gods, the first drops of wine, we always pour libations out to the gods first, often on the fire. You pour that out for the gods. And again, what we're going to be getting here is very much is it here or maybe it's further? No, it is further on. Continuing on in, like, all these demonstrations of rites, which is also showing again how great Nestor is and his family is, that they are very, they follow all of the proper rules and etiquette, if you will, of the ancient Greek world. Yeah, it's saying something when a modern take is more harsh towards a woman than the ancient Greek one. Yeah, it is. It was one of the things, if anybody's familiar with Margaret Atwood's Penelope, I didn't love her portrayals, especially of Helen and Clytemnestra, and the way that she writes Penelope is a kind of like, I'm not like other girls, which I was like, oh, that's the route we took? Okay, sure, I guess. So did the priests eat all the sacrifices? They just let the stuff rot or seal it away? So Tumbleweed 155, we're going to read about that a little later, where they start talking about how they would do these rites so that, you know, the gods get their share and everybody else gets to eat. We're just not there yet. Every cup, poured rounds for all. They rose and flung the victims' tongues on the fire and poured libations out. When they'd poured and drunk to their hearts' content, Athena and Prince Telemachus both started up to head for their ship at once. But Nestor held them there, objecting strongly. Zeus forbid, and the other deathless gods as well, that you resort to your ship and put my house behind like a rank pauper's without a stitch of clothing. No piles of rugs, no blankets in his place, for host and guests to slumber soft in comfort. Why, I've plenty of fine rugs and blankets here. No, by God, the true son of my good friend Odysseus won't bed down on a ship's deck, not while I'm alive or my sons are left at home to host our guests. Whoever comes to our palace, newfound friends. Nestor, is my house not good enough for you? No, he's more like saying, who do you think I am that I would not let you sleep in my house? Whoa. No. Get your ass inside. It's like he's turning into a yaya. Like the whole like, what are you doing? Get inside. Get inside, you go sleep. I feed you, we go sleep. Like, I can imagine my yaya losing her mind over something like this. In the case of godly king, Nestor is a grandparent. Yeah, he's a papu. He is a papu. So he's just like, get your asses back inside. How dare you think I'm not going to give you a bed? Connections made between Dionysus and the wine dark sea in ancient record. No, so the wine dark sea was used as a description because they didn't really have words for color. Like, they didn't really have words for like blue, green, yellow, orange, red, so they would use descriptors with relation to light and dark. So wine dark sea was their way of saying like darkish, bluish, greenish, purplish, whatever colors the seas are. Yeah, I will sooner give you my bed than let you leave, exactly. Every time wine dark sea is mentioned, Game Wizard. That's like talking about like Dawn and her rosy fingers. Be careful playing that game. Wine dark sea is so poetic though. It is one of my favorite phrases and one that's just so known. Dear old man, you are right, Athena exclaimed, her eyes brightening now. Telemachus should oblige you. Much the better way. Let him follow you now, sleep in your halls, and I'll go back to our trim black ships, hearten the crew, and give each man his orders. I'm the only veteran in their ranks, I tell you. All the rest, of an age with brave Telemachus, are younger men who sailed with him as friends. I'll bed down there by the dark hull tonight. At dawn, push off for the proud Cauconians. Those people owe me a debt long overdue, and no means some, believe me. But you, seeing my friend is now your guest, speed him on his way with a chariot and your son, and give him the finest horses that you have, bred for stamina, trained to race the wind. So, essentially, Telemachus is go to Sparta overland. We love that. Now, and this is where Athena basically drops all guys. With that, the bright-eyed goddess winged away in an eagle's form and flight. Amazement fell on all the Achaeans there. The old king, astonished by what he'd seen, grasped Telemachus's hand and cried out to the prince, Dear boy, never fear you'll be a coward or defenseless. Not if at your young age the gods will guard you so. Of all who dwell on Olympus, this was none but she, Zeus's daughter, the glorious one, his third born, who prized your gallant father among the Argives. So calling Athena his third born, specifically, it's a literal rendering of one of Athena's epithets, which is Tritogeneia, but as I read, noted that this word's meaning is apparently very heavily disputed in scholarship, and there are a lot of theories for what it might actually mean, but specifically in here, at least according to the notes on the translations and from what I read, this is a very literal rendering of what that word seems to mean, which is it's just one of Athena's epithets. She's the third of his children. Peg, you are kicking me off this chair. I have about this much chair left. I'm dying. Athena's transformations at the end of conversations get me. Whoa, an eagle. I thought Zeus was the eagle. Yes, and it's her noting that I am a child of Zeus. Peg, pick a side. Sorry, guys. She's making my... Peg, my sweet baby. It is her chair, but my butt's falling asleep and I have the bad back. So my darling, my pumpkin, thank you. Pick a spot. It definitely doesn't mean third favorite, correct. It's just third born. Needs a pet chair. I really do need a chair that can fit her on it too. Don't have jokes about whether Zeus was Athena's father or her mother. No, her mother was known to be Themis, or Metis. Metis, sorry, not Themis. Can you set the Pegamedes on your lap? She only wants to be partially on my lap. I can, but not greatly. Like, she wants to be partially on and partially off. Make way, Pegaland. Ah, there we go. But yes, no, Athena doing big dramatic exit and the eagle to say, that's right, bitches, Zeus's daughter, what's up? Peg deserves a love seat, and I know, really, I should get a big, this desk chair is ancient, I should get a bigger one that's got room for her, but also has these things where I can lean against. It's exclusive as being. Ah. Now, O Queen, be gracious, give us high renown, myself, my children, my loyal wife and queen, and I will make you a sacrifice, a yearling heifer, broad in the brow, unbroken, never yoked by men. I'll offer it up to you. I'll sheathe its horns in gold. So he prayed, and Pallas Athena heard his prayer. And Nestor, the noble chariot driver, led them on, his sons and sons-in-law, back to his regal palace. Once they reached the storied halls of the aged king, they sat on rows of low and high-backed chairs. As they arrived, the old man mixed them all a bowl, stirring the hearty wine, seasoned 11 years before a servant broached it, loosed its seal. Mulling it in the bowl, old Nestor poured a libation out, praying hard to Pallas Athena, daughter of Zeus, whose shield is storm and thunder. Once they had poured their offerings, drunk their fill, the Pylians went to rest, each in his own house. But the noble chariot driver let Telemachus, King Odysseus' son, sleep at the palace now, on a corded bed inside the echoing colonnade, with Prince Pisistratus close beside him there. The young spearman, already captain of armies, though the last son still unwed within the walls. The king retired to chambers deep in his lofty house, where the queen, his wife, arranged and shared their bed. Getting out the good wine. Oh yeah, they broke out the good shit. When young Dawn, with her rose-red fingers, shone once more, old Nestor, the noble chariot driver, climbed from bed, went out, and took his seat on the polished stones, a bench, glistening white, rubbed with glossy oil, placed for the king before his looming doors. There Neleus held his sessions years ago, a match for the gods in council. But his fate had long since forced him down to death. Now royal Nestor in turn, Achaea's watch and ward, sat there holding the scepter, while his sons, coming out of their chambers, clustered round him, hovering near. Achephron, Stratius, Perseus, and Aretus, Thrasymedes like a god, and sixth, young Lord Pisistratus, came to join their ranks. They escorted Prince Telemachus in to sit beside them. Nestor, noble charioteer, began the celebration. Quickly, my children, carry out my wishes now, so I may please the gods. Athena, first of all, she came to me at Poseidon's flowing feast, Athena in all her glory. Now someone go to the fields to fetch a heifer, lead her here once more, a herdsman drive her in. Someone hurry down to Prince Telemachus's black ship, and bring up all his crewmen, leave just 2 behind, and another tell our goldsmith, skilled Laerces, to come and sheathe the heifer's horns in gold. The rest stay here together. Tell the maids inside the hall to prepare a sumptuous feast. Bring seats and firewood. Bring pure water, too. They all pitched in to carry out his orders. The heifer came from the fields, the crewman came from brave Telemachus' ship, and the smith came in with all his gear in hand, the tools of his trade, the anvil, hammer, and well-wrought tongs he used for working gold. I just realized Athena crashed Poseidon's banquet. Yes, she did. She did. And for that, Athena came as well to attend her sacred rites. The old horseman passing the gold to the smith and twining the foil, he sheathed the heifer's horn so the goddess's eyes might dazzle, delighted with the gift. Not Peg pushing Matt on the edge again. She does that. She got a slightly fancier sacrifice, but they did sacrifice a lot of bulls to Poseidon earlier, so she didn't really one-up him in any way. But they did make her a fancy gift because she appeared before them. So, yay. Not gonna lie, like getting proposed to someone's wedding. A little, but not as tactless. Next, Stratius and Echephron led the beast by the horns. Aretus, coming up from the storeroom, brought them lustral water, filling a flower-braided bowl. In his other hand, the barley in a basket. Thrasymedes, staunch in combat, stood ready, whetted axe in his grasp, to cut the heifer down. And Perseus held the basin for the blood. Now Nestor, the old charioteer, began the rite, pouring the lustral water, scattering barley meal. He lifted up his ardent prayers to Pallas Athena, launching the sacrifice, flinging onto the fire the first tufts of hair from the victim's head. How would Telemachus's crew, discovering Mentor, who they sailed with the whole time was actually Athena, affect them? They might not, in this instance, even know, because they're still back at the ship. If they end up finding, it would be rare for them to find out unless she revealed it to them. So the gods are usually pretty particular about who they reveal themselves to. How would it actually affect them? They would make sure they didn't say anything stupid, which they shouldn't anyway. But, there you go. But they would also then look at Telemachus going, oh shit, he's got a god on his side, so he is really kind of hot shit. So Perseus, or a different one. It's a different one. It's not that they named him after that particular hero. These were just names that were common. So you'll hear a lot of names that are similar or spelled exactly the same in these stories, Sacred account. Came up for the sacrifice to Athena, would they not have been told? We see that Athena comes, but we don't say specifically, I believe, that the men from the ship are coming out. I'll bid them dead. Because she's basically taking the ship somewhere else as well. So no, we don't say that those sailors come up specifically for European nobility of them. Same names, but different spellings, so hard to keep track. In this case, the spelling's exactly the same, too. They just have similar names. Only so many names. And what we're getting here, this whole breakdown of this sacrifice is essentially how you would do a sacrifice to the gods, which would also ultimately end up feeding other people. Worships Greek gods that Poseidon and Athena have a father-daughter relationship, and even if they do fight, is that true? No, because her father is Zeus. Her father is Zeus. She would never treat Poseidon as a father. I mean, he's her uncle, their family. 480, the crewmen came from Telemachus's brave ship. Cloverflowers, can you give me line numbers, please? I don't doubt you. It just makes it easier for me to flip. Because we don't say specific. Someone hurry down to. Oh, and bring up all his crewmen. Leave just two behind. Sorry, you are correct. At this point, they're coming up for Athena's sacrifice, but they weren't there to see her reveal herself. So they don't know that little tidbit. Sorry, Clover, that my brain's slightly mushifying. They don't know any of that. At this point, Athena coming to watch, it's not saying specifically whether she's in disguise or not, but they missed out on the stuff the day before. As a father figure, sunny days. Most of their relationship does not seem to go that way. So sunny days, no. I don't quite know where she got that idea. They are closer to frenemies than anything else. Is the one uncle you tell your family against in terms of Athena is the vibe I'm getting. They just had different temperaments, I would say. Poseidon is far more, as I've said, he's quicker to fly off the handle. He's a bit more temperamental than Athena, so sure, that rubs against her, but not really. Anything. So they know Athena made an appearance. They just don't know Mentor was Athena. Correct. So they know Athena showed up, but they don't know Mentor is Athena. So they're just here going okay, well, apparently Athena showed up. Whoa, that's cool. We're doing a thing to Athena. Volatile, thank you. That's another good word. Temperamental, volatile. I think they just like to squabble. Yes, they do. So Achromaticon, the palace thing actually is not something that Poseidon really holds against Athena, because the way that Pallas was killed ultimately was in kind of honorable combat, if you will. They were sparring. Now, you could blame Zeus for a lot of how that happened, but even more so, Athena goes above and beyond what she had to honor Pallas. Yes, I beat her. Uh, yes, Athena beat Pallas, but ultimately she then took her name as an epithet and had her involved with her likeness and gave Pallas even more glory than she ever would have had. And yes, Pallas is a child of Triton, not of Poseidon, but it's never listed that that's one of the reasons Poseidon and Athena like don't always gel. Excuse me. Eve, why does Dawn have red fingers? We talk about that in book 1, I believe. We talk about Eos. It might be book 2, but I know in one of the previous book clubs we talked about Eos, who she was, and where we get that whole red rosy fingers. Yes, achromaticon. Mostly the naming of Athens and people's tempers not matching well. Yeah, that's basically it. Who is Triton in Greek lore? He is a child of Amphitrite and Poseidon. He's their son. No interruption at all, Sunny Days. It was a good question. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, the first one, the victim's head. Prayer said, the scattering barley strewn, suddenly Nestor's son, impetuous Thrasymedes, strode up close and struck. The axe chopped the neck tendons through, and the blow stunned the heifer's strength. The women shrilled their cry, Nestor's daughters, sons as wives, and his own loyal wife, Eurydice, Clymenus' eldest daughter. Not the same one from the Orpheus myth. That's why we specified whose daughter she was. Then, hoisting up the victim's head from the trampled earth, they held her fast as the captain of men, Pisistratus, slashed her throat. Dark blood gushed forth, life ebbed from her limbs. They quartered her quickly, cut the thigh bones out, and all according to custom wrapped them round in fat, a double fold sliced clean and topped with strips of flesh. And the old king burned these over dried split wood, and over the fire poured out glistening wine, while young men at his side held 5-pronged forks. Once they'd burned the bones and tasted the organs, they sliced the rest into pieces, spitted them on skewers, and raising points to the fire, broiled all the meats. During the ritual, lovely Polycaste, youngest daughter of Nestor, Neleus' son, had bathed Telemachus, rinsing him off now, rubbing him down with oil. She drew a shirt and handsome cape around him. Out of his bath he stepped, glistening like a god, strode in and sat by the old commander Nestor. They roasted the prime cuts, pulled them off the spits, and sat down to feast, while ready stewards saw to rounds of wine and kept the gold cups flowing. When they'd put aside desire for food and drink, Nestor, the noble chariot driver, issued orders. Hurry, my boys. Bring Telemachus' horses, a good full main team. Hitch them to a chariot. He must be off at once. They listened closely, snapped to his commands, and hitched a rapid team to a chariot's yoke in haste. A housekeeper stowed some bread and wine aboard, and meats too, food fit for the sons of kings. Telemachus vaulted into the splendid chariot. Right beside him, Nestor's son, Pisistratus, captain of armies, boarded, seized the reins, whipped the team to a run, and on the horses flew, holding nothing back out into open country, leaving the heights of Pylos fading in their trail, shaking the yoke across their shoulders all day long. The sun sank, and the roads of the world grew dark as they reached Phaera, pulling up to Diocles' halls, the son of Ortilochus, son of the Alpheus River. He gave them a royal welcome. There they slept the night. When young Dawn, with her rose-red fingers, shone once more, they yoked their pair again, mounted the blazoned car, and out through the gates and echoing colonnade they whipped the team to a run, and on they flew, holding nothing back. And the princes reached the wheatlands, straining now for journey's end. So fast, those purebred stallions raced them on as the sun sank, and the roads of the world grew dark. And that is the end of book 3, because in book 4 we meet the king and queen of Sparta. So right now Telemachus is going overland as we are on mainland Greece, so no need for ships when you don't have to use them. Book 4, this is Sparta, yes, and you can see the distance this is taking. Like, they're running this chariot pretty much at full clip as much as they can, and it's taking them a couple days to get there. And Nestor gave Telemachus good advice, saying, hey, don't be away too long, shit can go down when you're not there. And this is part of where we also get this idea of like why Telemachus was sort of stuck, was he was quite afraid of leaving his mother alone, because obviously there's no one really defending them on Ithaca, but he had to take the chance. Their name Perseus and Eurydice. I just thought of Nestor's family was involved in a lot of it since Nestor's so old. Nope, just the same names, different people. I can ask my question now. Sunny, please ask your question. I like these onwards to the adventure kind of lines. Yes, very much. This is like onward, offward, on the adventure. Let's go. How Spartan is Sparta at this point in the story? I know most of what we know about Sparta is a meme based on a particular time period. Most of what people think about with Sparta is specifically during kind of the classical period, the time of the Persian Wars. I mean, Sparta is its own thing very much at this point, but it is also just a city-state. Probably not quite to the level that we think of it when we think of the classical age. That's still a couple, I think, 100 years away. But kind of like pretty much, but not quite. A lot of the archaeology of the Mycenaean age of like what this would have been is, we don't have as much as we do in the classical age. And most people who were writing about that particular, the Mycenaean age and the known age, were often writing like a couple hundred years afterwards. Up and off and away we go, yes. And modern time with the film Comic 300 doesn't help with factual knowledge at all. Yeah, true. It's like people don't realize that 300 was so stylized purposefully by, is it Frank Miller, I believe, who wrote that? I mean, he very purposefully stylized that story the way he did. That story is almost more about storytelling than it is about anything else. I mean, like, I find that and even the film fascinating on many levels, but it is deliberately taking a highly stylized and stylistic view of that incident. Very much kind of in the way that ancient historians probably would have told the story. You could almost argue a pastiche in some ways in using the graphic novel medium to tell that story the way that it does. I might have missed it in a previous book. Did Mentor Athena encourage this journey, or did something else spark Telemachus' mission to Nestor? So Nova's gameplay, that is in book 2, is where we really get Athena in the guise of Mentor and just as herself in all these ways telling Telemachus, get your ass in gear, you gotta figure shit out. So that's kind of book 1 and 2. We did talk about that. This is Sparta would be more so later, is correct. People talk about Penelope being very into violence and warfare because she's a princess of a Spartan. Yeah, which has to do with people's views of Sparta as Sparta is later. Not likely true. I mean, Penelope is just really known for being particularly clever. More than anything else, which she absolutely is. I mean, she holds off these suitors for like half or a little over, for about like half a decade. She's very clever. Remember that just because Sparta was slightly different from Greece, it was still Greece. They treated their women slightly better, like letting them have stays and St. Fairs, but not much. Yeah, so this is the thing, is people talk about like Greece. Greece wasn't really Greece. Like, it wasn't this one unified thing. It was, everybody was their own city-state. So like the way we talk about Greece, like it's this one, peninsula, this one country, like they didn't even view it as that. And certainly not in the Mycenaean age, they didn't. Every city-state was their own thing. Like, while they were linked by religion and kind of, and language to a degree, I mean, obviously there are many dialects of ancient Greek from what I've come out to understand. And the, what if Odysseus met Dark Era Dazai Osamu from BSD? I have no idea what that is. So as soon as I see that question, I don't understand it. The only one of this is to really take up arms was Clytemnestra. Correct. And the way she did it wasn't great. The beta versions of the Greeks, Mycenaeans. I mean, in the Mycenaeans, you're specifically looking kind of at Mycenae and Sparta and that area of the Peloponnese. You have other areas of Greece that are having their own versions of culture. So like they're all connected by their language and their like certain cultural customs and the like, but each city-state viewed itself as its own kingdom and its own thing. The only time they ever really united in being Greeks was the Trojan War. It was kind of one of the first times they really all said, we are all Greeks and we don't stand by this, and fuck you. Smart, pretty Spartan woman. I mean, amen. Mari, I agree. Would it be somewhat fair the only reason we think of Greece as this one big thing at this point in myth is because Odysseus managed to get them all to agree to a pact at one point? Tumbleweed, yeah, it really, the Trojan War was like, you could argue the start of them kind of coming more together, though granted we see them all fall apart at the end. I think it's just also when we teach it now, it's easier to talk about it in a more collective sense than to trying to say, well, this city-state did this, and this city-state did this, and this city-state did this. City-states is more like European EU to the European, like kinda. Yeah, I guess you could say that Cune, that's not a bad comparison, that they're kind of like the Greece and all the city-states are like the EU. They are very much kind of their own thing, but they are more connected than other areas of the EU. Like they're all speaking Greek and they're worshiping the same gods, even if they might worship different aspects and doing it slightly differently. The one who kickstarted the idea was Odysseus. He did it specifically for that instance, but it wasn't meant to be a thing that he didn't do it in terms of it like, let's unify Greece. It was, let's all just not kill each other over Helen here, okay? Like, that was pretty much why he did it. He didn't do it with any, like, grand assumptions beyond that. It was just a way where he saw, like, this is gonna be a bloodbath if everybody is here for Helen. Like, let's find a way to not have that happen. When they say that a daughter of Nestor bathed Telemachus, do they mean fully bathed? I mean, she would have been there to help pour the oils in the water and have everything set. We'll leave that up to imagination. Honestly, I don't know the full answer of how thoroughly she helped bathe him. Also was weird, the terms of pact was basically if someone stole her, they would group up. Because he said that mainly because Helen was so reputed for how beautiful she was. It was just assumed someone might try to steal her. I mean, look, it's not the first time people went to go and steal a wife. Let's look at Theseus and his idiot friend Pirithous deciding, let's go steal Persephone. Like, there was a precedent for someone pulling stupid shit. So Odysseus went, you know what, let's just make sure no future shenanigans go down between us either, because that would start that would start a war within Greece, and like that would just be so messy. They just didn't realize it would be someone outside the Greek speaking people who would go and steal her. Okay, just this once, can we not kill each other? I'm really sorry my connection is bad, Clover. I can't tell if my question was answered. That's the first one we got. Clover, oh, here we go. I see your question now. I can't tell if you least of all know were born and reared without the gods' goodwill was meant to be a double negative, say Telemachus didn't have the gods' goodwill. So what he's saying there in that moment, he's actually saying like, yo, there's no way you were not born with the gods' will. It could also be me in the way I said it. So he's saying like, you absolutely have the gods' will. Like, there's no way you weren't born with the gods' will because Athena liked your dad so much. Like, no way. So Clover, that's the answer to your question. No, they stole a younger Helen. Yes, they did do that too. Thank you, Acromaticon. Yeah, I'd almost forgotten. They do basically steal a younger Helen. So she had been stolen before as a child. Like, oh my god. And then Hades got to Theseus and Pirithous before they could steal Persephone. Yeah, they got to like the outside of the underworld and didn't actually make it in. So like stupid shit has happened. So it totally makes sense that Odysseus makes that pact. What a great idea. Yeah, Gold Star concepts. My favorite tragedies. Oh, Medea's a great tragedy. A war within Greece would probably affect a small island like Ithaca the worst. Maya, correct. A war in which the city-states on the mainland are fighting, Ithaca's screwed because they're all basically more powerful than Ithaca, and Ithaca will inevitably at some point get roped in somehow, and he does not want to have to pick. Helen can't catch a darn break. That's true. Greek, I don't think you were born and raised against any other questions on book 3 or related to the Odyssey before we just sort of like descend into chatting for a bit? Because this way at least I know where to cut the stream for when it goes up later, although this will probably be the longest one given we had so many tangents through the reading. Oh, excuse me. So any other Odyssey book 1 through 3 questions? Oh, here we go. With Nestor as old as he is there a reason one of his sons hasn't taken over as king? I know he's still a badass, but he's still in his prime. He may be old, but that man is doing so well. He kind of doesn't need to step down yet. He likely delegates a lot to his sons, Clover, certain aspects. But he's still doing fine. And hey, Matis, oh, I'm glad this helps you understand the chapters much better. Yeah, this chapter 3 is a little like you're reading it going like, why are we taking the time to talk about this? What is going on? So context definitely helps. It isn't a good book club unless you have tangents correct. So who exactly was in charge of ruling while Odie was gone? I believe it is stated that Mentor, the actual Mentor, assists in this, and likely his father Laertes would have stepped in when he needed to before he kind of just like couldn't do it anymore. As we know, his grief overtakes him. But Mentor is the one who was mentioned to help try and keep things running a bit, and helping to raise Telemachus to be able to take over. Do you think Odysseus caught any flack for basically being to blame for the Trojan War? You mean for the like setting up the idea of, hey, let's make a pact? No, they all just blamed the Trojans for stealing Helen. So he never got flack from the Greeks for that. Now the Trojans hated him, but you know, and the Romans hated Odysseus, but you know, they're firmly pro-Trojan. So no, the other Greeks never were like, Odysseus, how dare you have us had made this pact. It was just like, they were all so mad at the Trojans being like, you did what? Oh, hell no, they're coming for our women. And just like, oh, hell no. I feel my tangents and rabbit holes. We're 3 chapters in and it's all gossip and drama. Yes. Nestor still rules because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Very much. Yeah, book 3. A young man listened to a real old man expound on his latest war story experience. Yes. Your tangents and another thing. Yeah, it's very much in real time and another thing. Okay, bye, Alec Dryfeet. Never questions who's ruling Ithaca when Mentor's with him on the seas. When Mentor's with him on the seas, at this point, he's kind of told all the other men who are there, being like, everybody stays at my house at their own risk. If Odysseus did die on his Nostos and Telemachus found his body unburied somewhere, would decomposition affect burial and funeral rites, the body not being whole? No, decomposition would not affect that. He would be able to take his father's body and give it a proper burial in that regard. You know, if he died somewhere all alone, like, that's sad. It definitely has an effect on the Kleos, but hey, there's a body you can bury. It's why he also says, like, if my father died at sea and there's no body to reclaim, I can at least still build him a funerary mound and do all this. So no, that would not have an effect. You don't mess with a man's wife, all of Greece. Yeah. Decomposition is okay, but dismemberment is not. Correct. Because dismemberment is a deliberate violation of the body. And so that is a big problem. So decomposition is the natural course, like you died, you're whole, you're in one piece. Are burials at sea acceptable, or would they need to find land to do it properly? They go and find land, Game Wizard. That's why we talk about Menelaus being like, oh shit, my dude died here at sea. I need to pop over here to actually bury this guy. So it was always find land and bury them. Did the Romans also hate Paris? Not really. They hated the Greeks more, so they don't totally love Paris. Like, he's not their favorite, but they hate the Greeks more. Yeah, the live keeps buffering for me too. Try and, what's the word I'm looking for? Refresh it. I'm like doing the symbol here. What if someone died on a boat? They would bring them to land even if it's far. Yes. They would find the closest bit of land they could. That was the goal. Yeah, in general, if anybody's having buffering problems, my brain was also buffering, correct. Buffering problems usually refresh the page, and that helps. If your body got lost at sea and wasn't buried, you'd never make it to the underworld. That's why dying at sea was so scary, and Poseidon used to be an underworld god in the Mycenaean area. Correct. It was terrifying to die at sea. It was part of why these nostoses, these journeys at sea, were so terrifying. Like, if your body ended up being lost at sea. So that's why if you died at sea and they could have your body, they did not let go of that body. They would wait till they hit land and then bury the body. Yeah, it probably smelled rank. I don't even want to think about that, not gonna lie. They bury in like a sandbar. It kind of depends on the topography of Greece or wherever they are, which they were mostly sailing around the Mediterranean. Whatever they could find as land, which would be acceptable for them to be able to bury someone, because there was a ritual to it. It's not just like you bury them in a hole. They had an entire ritual and like building particular mounds and usually rocks. So a sandbar maybe wouldn't do it. They would want to find land. Did they know being around corpses could cause more deaths, or is that just a necessary sacrifice to bury someone right? I'm not entirely sure they realized that. Not really. They probably knew it wasn't great, mainly because it was uncomfortable, but I'm not entirely sure they had that level of, you could say, medical knowledge. Because not all of you would make it to that one, I'm pretty sure. I can use thinking for Egyptian. So achromatic hound, that might be a bleed over from the Egyptians, but the Greeks were not super huge, and you having been dismembered, they usually tried to bury bodies whole. A cairn with rocks if they couldn't bury, I'm guessing. Yeah, Game Wizard, essentially, they were usually piling a mound, a rock, some sort of signal that somebody was buried here. So it's not just like they dump you in a hole and cover it and, you know, cover you with dirt. There was usually, yeah, something. Like, and usually there was a pyre. They were burning stuff as part of the funerary ritual. So again, a sandbar might not work because you need quite a few supplies. My sneak news, old man tells a bunch of war stories, correct. Yeah. Well, by the time pestilence hit Athens, they would know already. Yeah, no, Athens goes through plague and stuff like that, and those things happen, but they never always totally understood, like, what was the source of these. And this is before even then. Like, obviously, Homer writing down this story, it's supposed to be like a couple hundred years after supposedly this has all happened anyway, so. What if someone lost a leg in a war but lived long afterwards? Would that count the same? Probably not, because you continued to live. And you lost that limb in combat. You would probably honestly prefer to die, but you continue to live, and it would be like a war wound. So there are some exceptions to this, but combat and warfare kind of exists as its own exceptions in many ways. There was no body. How do they perform funerals, or do they? Game Wizard. So you hear Telemachus mention, I believe it is in book 2. He talks about, like, if I find out my father died at sea and there's no body to bury, I will come back and I will still build the funeral mound and, you know, give the proper honors and the glory. There's just not going to be a body for any sort of, like, taking care of the body aspect of the funeral. They would pretty much go through the same rites, but anything that would relate to treatment of the body likely wouldn't happen. Hand washing rituals after touching dead bodies. Clover, flowers. The Greeks, I do believe, had something similar, and a lot of that will link into similar legends of, like, Asclepios and him bringing medicine, as it were, to the Greeks and the like. So it's just a quest to confirm death regardless of body being found. Game Wizard, yes. This is really what Telemachus is doing, is they don't know if Odysseus is alive or dead, so he just needs to learn that first. If Odysseus is dead, then how did he die, and is there a body to get? If Odysseus is alive, what the fuck is going on? So yeah, this is first and foremost a quest to confirm proof of life is what Telemachus is doing here.